separation is during the period, then you're answering the question to this interrogatory, correct, sir?
I'm saying during the course of my marriage, I did not have sexual relations to anyone, and this answer is no.
Well, again, Your Honor,
I understand. You can proceed, Mr. Gill.
We need a yes or no. Let's just get down to it. Did you or did you not, by May the 30th, 2023, have had sexual relations with Miss Willis, yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay. Now, what you did is you answered no to that question, didn't you, or none, correct?
I didn't answer no to the question you just asked. I answered no to the interrogatory question.
And the interrogatory stands that you answered as a pleading in a civil proceeding, your divorce case, right?
Yes.
Now, excuse me. The next interrogatory, let's move there. That interrogatory states as follows: identify any and all occasions in which you entertain a member of the opposite sex other than your spouse who is not related to you by blood or marriage. You see that?
I do.
Now, there are two parts to this. The second part is, I read on, or in which a member of the opposite sex other than your spouse, not related to you by blood or marriage, entertained you. And then it goes on to say, including but not limited to dining, drinking, in restaurants, bars, pubs, hotels. You see that, correct?
I do.
Now, as of May the 30th, 2023, when you filed this interrogatory, you had in fact entertained Miss Willis on many occasions, had you not?
Again, during the course of the marriage was irretrievably broken in 2015.
Well,
the answer's still no.
Let's read what the interrogatory says about the time period required to answer the interrogatory. Because what it says is, it goes on to say, including but not limited to dining and or drinking at any restaurants, bars, pubs, hotels, or persons' homes from the date of marriage to the present. You understand what the word present means?
I do.
And present means the filing on May the 30th, 2023. Isn't that right?
It is.
So as of May the 30th, 2023, you had done a lot of entertaining of Miss Willis, had you not?
I had done some, yes.
And in fact, under your testimony, you would have said that she had also entertained you. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And so your answer to this interrogatory is false, is it not, sir?
No, it's not false.
Well, hate to dance around the answer is yes, you did entertain Miss Willis, correct? Right?
Yes.
She's not your spouse at that time or any time, correct?
That's correct.
She's not related to you by blood or marriage, correct?
That's correct.
But you entertained her, right?
Yes.
And during the course from your marriage, the period of time up to the present, so the answer would have been, yes, I did entertain somebody, correct?
During the course of the marriage, no.
Mr. Wade.
Mr. Gillen, I think we've made our point. I think it speaks for itself, and we can save that for argument.
I'll just follow up with one quick question. Do you understand what the word present means?
Your Honor, that's been asked of us.
I think we did cover that already as well.
Okay. Now, what has happened from the time that you filed this court document in May of 2023, let's go over some of the things that you have been involved in terms of being entertained or entertaining. Prior to your filing on the answer on the interrogatories on May the 30th, 2023, we've already established, have we not, that you had paid for a Royal Caribbean cruise to the Bahamas with Miss Willis, correct?
Yes, sir, with Miss Willis and my mother.
Well, your mother's not part of this interrogatory. I'm talking about Miss Willis, okay? So you paid and caused to be paid approximately $3,335 on that trip, Bahamas trip, from October the 28th through October the 31st, correct?
Your Honor, objection. I think we've checked this ground several times already.
Mr. Gillen, let's cover new ground.
Well, I'm just trying to establish with specificity the things that he had done to entertain or be entertained prior to May the 30th, 2023. I'll try to move through it
Sure.
quickly.
Well, that's already part of the record in terms of his prior testimony, and so if you want to link those two things together, you can do that during argument.
Well, so let me discuss this. You indicated that during the course of your explanation concerning the Belize trip, that Ms. Willis paid you all that money back in cash. Remember?
Yes, sir.
Now, the Belize trip had just happened, hadn't it? That occurred in March 18th, 2023, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're filing this maybe 2 months after you have gone to Belize with Ms. Willis, correct?
Again, I believe all of this is our.
I think you might be getting somewhere new. We'll see.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So we've got the trip in to Belize on March the 18th, 2023. You and Ms. Willis, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, 2 months later, you file the interrogatories that speak for themselves that we've gone over a few minutes ago, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, the March the 18th, 2023, to state the obvious, is before May the 30th, 2023. Will you agree with me on that?
I do.
Okay. So then you tell us that Miss Willis paid you in cash all the money for the entire trip. It was a gift for you for your birthday, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm sure you probably have the deposit slips where you took the cash and deposited the cash into your account, don't you?
I did not deposit the cash in my account.
You don't have a single solitary deposit slip to corroborate or support any of your allegations that you were paid by Mrs. Willis in cash, do you?
No, sir.
Not a single solitary one.
Not a one.
Now, when Miss Willis would pay you in cash, would you scamper down to the ATM with her and as she drew money out of her account to pay you these thousands of dollars?
Mr. Gillen might scamper, but there's been no evidence that Mr. Wade does. I object to the phrasing, the argumentative nature of the question.
On that issue, overruled.
Did you and Miss Wade scamper down to the ATM machine and have her draw out, for example, on the Belize trip, just on your payment would have been $2,794?
Miss Wade,
For clarity, yeah, thank you.
Pardon me?
Miss Wade and I didn't go to Belize.
No, excuse me, Miss Willis, I'm sorry. Did you go down to the ATM with Miss Willis while she drew out $2,794 to pay you in cash that you did? Did you go to the ATM with her?
No, sir. She didn't go to the ATM. She carried the cash.
Oh, and so she would give you the cash. Did you have a little place in your house where you just stack up all this cash that you apparently got to repay you for these benefits that you bestowed on her?
Well, Mr. Gillen, if I answered that, I'm putting myself in jeopardy. If I tell the world that I have cash someplace in my home, don't you think that could be problematic?
No, I don't. I want an answer as to whether or not you have a little cash hoard in your house where you have allegedly taken the money that you got from Mrs. Willis and went and put it somewhere. Where'd you put it?
No, sir.
Now, just put it on the hip and kind of walk around money?
Did I put it on my hip?
Yeah, just walking around money where you would spend cash yourself?
Let me finish. Did I put it on my hip in Belize and walk around with
No,
it?
when you got paid back, would you take the money, the cash that she gave you, and would you just carry it around with you for spending money around town?
So we have to break down each trip because, for example, for the cruise, she paid me the money before we took the cruise. So I was here and I could put the money in my pocket or put it away wherever I wanted to do with it. Other trips, she would give me the money there. So at that point, I could either spend it or put it in my pocket or put it in the hotel safe.
There's no special place that you would have all this cash that you would be getting from her that you've told us about to pay back for the benefits that you have bestowed on her?
The only special place that cash would have gone would have been to one of my children.
Okay. Now, are you aware, have you discussed these pleadings with Ms. Willis?
No, sir.
So there's been no discussion between you and Ms. Willis about the allegation concerning the benefits that you have bestowed on her. Is that correct?
To the phrasing, the benefits bestowed upon her, I don't believe that's an accurate reflection of the testimony, and I don't think that's the appropriate phrase.
I think overruled. You can answer the question.
Okay, when you said proceedings, are you talking about the divorce proceedings? Because we were talking about the interrogatories. To that question, the answer is no. If you're at, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead with your answer. I'll hear the complete answer, then I'll follow up.
Okay, if you're asking me about this hearing, the proceedings of this hearing, have we discussed the financial piece based upon Mr. Roman's motion? Yes.
So you have discussed the financial piece. Where did that discussion take place?
Conference room.
Were you other people there, or were you and Ms. Willis discussing this about what your position was going to be?
The relevance of this.
Well,
Mr. Gillen?
and the relevance has to do with suddenly we have a declaration from Mr. Wade in this case where he says roughly equal and then shows one alleged payment by Ms. Willis. No mention of cash, none. So I need to find out a little bit more about how suddenly we have this revelation about cash from the witness stand today.
Overruled.
So we part company there when you say no mention of cash. If I provided one receipt that didn't amount to what you would think was roughly equal, the rest of it is cash.
Well, did you in your declaration, sir, it was filed in this case, did you tell the court in that declaration that the expenditure that you had provided on behalf of Ms. Willis was paid for back by her in cash, yes or no?
I believe that I did when I said that the expenses were split roughly evenly.
If you could point to me any place in your affidavit where you used the word cash, I would appreciate it. Take your time.
I didn't use the word cash, no sir.
No, you didn't use the word cash, did you?
But I didn't say that she didn't give it to me in cash.
No, you just didn't tell anybody that you allegedly got paid back in cash, right?
No, I told everyone who asked.
Today.
Yes, sir.
Now, who else was with you, if anyone else, when you and Ms. Willis were discussing how you would be handling the financial component of the motion here today, that is the personal benefits?
I'm going to object to the relevance of that, Your Honor.
Mr. Gillen?
Well, the relevance is if they know that they're going to be called as witnesses, they've been subpoenaed, and they are discussing what they're going to say, we need to know that. The court needs to know that. It goes to the veracity of Mr. Willis and, Ms. Willis and Mr. Wade.
Overruled.
We didn't discuss how we were going to handle testimony.
My question was, when you were discussing with Ms. Willis in the conference room, when you were discussing what you perceived to be the situation concerning the benefits for the payments,
Yes, sir.
was there anyone else present?
No, sir.
How long did the meeting take?
Probably 5 or 10 minutes.
Did Ms. Willis tell you what she was going to say?
No, sir.
Did you ask her whether she had any bank withdrawals that would corroborate the assertion that she would pay you back in large sums of cash for these trips to the Caribbean, Belize, California, on and on and on?
Your Honor, again, I object. The proffer, when the last relevance objection was made, was that Mr. Gillen needed to know who else was there, these could be potential witnesses that he could cross-examine. That question has been answered, so I can't object.
Okay. I think it's still exploring possible bias or motive to shape his testimony, so overrule on that ground.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Willis, Mr. Wade, when you were having this discussion, did you ask Ms. Willis, do you have anything to support these cash withdrawals?
No, sir.
Did you ask her where she got the cash?
Here, this is the conversation. I produced my credit card statement that showed what Ms. Merchant in her filing was representing. That was the conversation.
Okay, so when she would pay you back in cash, were you aware of what her financial situation was? Do you know what?
No, sir.
Your Honor, I object to the relevance.
Well, Your Honor, it's relevant because we've been bombarded with a book, Find Me the Votes, in which...
What's at issue is the financial benefit, and if that plays a material interest in an actual conflict of interest. So I think that's relevant.
Thank you. Now, have you read the book, Find Me the Votes?
I have.
You have.
I have.
Okay. Now, in that book, Ms. Willis is telling the authors about how financially destitute she was, or kind of hitting down on the bottom as she was running for DA. Do you remember that part of the book?
So let me qualify the response. I've read the book in parts. I hadn't had the time to sit and read the book in its entirety.
Did you read that part about how she's telling the authors about how little money she had and how financially she was in bad shape prior to when she was running? Did you read that part?
No, sir.
Did you ever have discussions with Ms. Willis about her financial situation, which was in apparently in rough shape prior to her being elected DA?
No, sir. Ms. Willis made it clear that her financial business was just that. It was her business. I know nothing about her financial status. I know nothing about how she was faring before or after the election, or even now. I know nothing about her finances.
Telling us that she didn't share that with you, but chose to share it with the authors of a book that's been published and printed and sold nationally.
I think that's a fair question for Cross.
I don't know that she shared it with the author. I don't know that the author is telling the truth. I don't know the author, so I don't know, sir.
Okay. Now, did you give an interview to the authors of that book?
I've given no interview, sir.
So you haven't talked to them at all, correct?
I haven't talked to any media.
All right.
None.
Now, as it relates to the...
I'd like to, though.
As it relates to, again, from your bank records that you're aware of, there'll be no cash deposits, right?
I didn't say that.
Are there cash deposits which line up with the money that you have allegedly received from Ms. Willis to, quote, pay you back for her part of the trips?
So here's the thing. In my bank records, you will see cash deposits. You will see check deposits. I can't say that you look through the bank records and you won't see cash deposits, because I have two sources of income, sir. Income comes from my private practice, my firm, and income comes from the contract here with Fulton County. During the course of private practice, occasionally I will have occasion to deposit cash into my account.
And in preparation for this hearing and your testimony, did you go through your bank records to find out if you could locate any cash deposits that would corroborate your testimony?
No, sir. I didn't go through my bank records at all.
Now, so what you would do, the money that you received, of course, the money that you received from your work for Fulton County, that's public funds, correct?
No, sir. That's private funds. It's my
Public funds pay you to do work for Fulton County, correct?
Tell me what the definition of a public fund is.
A public fund would be your funds, as in not fund, but funds, money. Public money, as in money from taxpayers, either in Fulton County or the state of Georgia, pay you to do the work that you're doing here in this case, yes or no?
One or the other, I'm certain.
You know which
is
one?
the case. I don't know which one, no, sir.
Now, you would take those public funds, and those public funds were then used, deposited in your account, and they were then used to pay on the credit cards for the trips that you would take with Ms. Willis, correct?
I object to the question insofar as the characterization of public funds. The witness didn't testify to that, and I don't believe there's been any evidence to that. Once it's paid to Mr. Wade, it's private funds.
Well, the point of it is that you got
All
money.
right, Mr. Gillens, rephrasing.
Yeah, I'll read it. Let's break it down. You got money from Fulton County for the work that you do here, right?
Yes, sir.
You would send in invoices, and they would pay you money, correct?
Yes, sir.
Those money, that the private money, that money was money from either the citizens of Fulton County or from the state of Georgia, correct? That's what I mean by public funds. Agreed?
I guess I'm having trouble with the notion that the citizens of Fulton County have paid me any funds. I'm not certain the funding source. I can tell you that either the state of Georgia or Fulton County has written me a check.
So that would be, those two entities are public entities, correct?
Yes.
So that would be public funds, right? Right? Yeah.
Yes.
And those public funds are from the same source that you would then use to pay out on your expenses for the trips that you took Ms. Willis on, correct?
No, sir. As I testified to moments ago, I have income coming in from my law firm. I also have income coming in from the funds that we're here discussing now from either the state of Georgia or Fulton County and or both. I'm not certain what it is. So to say
Sorry,
that
I didn't mean to
that
cut
I'm-
you off. Go ahead.
So to say that I'm paying a credit card statement with funds coming from Fulton County or the state of Georgia would not be an accurate statement, because the funds could have very well come from my private practice.
What percentage of your income in 2022 came from money where you're working on this case or from your partners working for the Fulton County office?
In 2022, I would say 50-50.
You think 50-50 in 2022?
Yes, sir.
What about 2023?
Probably 60-40.
60-40.
Yes, sir.
So the money that would be in those accounts, at least 60% of those, in your view, would be public funds, that those monies were then used to pay for the expenses that you had incurred for the trips that you took Miss Willis on, the cruises, the Napa Valleys, the Bahamas, correct? Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And now, what you did is that when you signed on in November 1st of 2021, that's when you signed on to be counsel for the anti-corruption matters, right?
Yes, sir.
Now, as you know, in your engagement letter, it doesn't say that you're signing on and your scope of work is to work on the Trump special grand jury investigation, doesn't.
No, sir.
It says that you're signing on to work on anti-corruption, the anti-corruption unit matters, correct?
Yes, sir.
Matters with a plural, correct?
Yes, sir.
So in your contract, there is no specific reference to any specific case. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, but you didn't sign on for the duration. There was a period, you have a contract, and then it would then expire, and then you would have a new contract, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, of course, the extension that you received, the first one was in November of 2021, and then you filed, or excuse me, there was a renewal in November the 15th of 2022. Is that right?
Sounds right.
Oh, okay. Now, that was right after you got re-upped by Miss Willis, right after you took Miss Willis to Aruba. Isn't that right? On that November the 1st, 2022 trip to Aruba, and through November the 4th, 2022. correct?
What does re-up mean?
Well, re-up means that you came back, your contract was up, and then on November the 15th, you and Ms. Willis signed a new contract for you, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you were in taking her to the Aruba and on the cruises and the resort there, did you discuss your re-upping of signing an extension on your contract?
No, sir.
So,
But you make an excellent point. I'm glad you pointed that out. So the trip to Aruba, the contract was not in existence then.
so you're saying that you were not
Under contract.
in your contract. Did you send any invoices in for work that you did after your first contract expired?
No, sir.
You didn't.
No, sir.
So when that expired, that was it. So and then you're saying that after the Aruba trip, you get re-upped with a new contract, correct?
I signed a new contract. Yes,
Now,
sir.
was there any modifications on that contract? Did you get an extension on the cap that you were limited on the first one? Were there any modifications at all, Mr. Willis? Excuse me, I've done that again. I apologize.
I've been called worse.
I'm sorry.
I've been called worse.
Now, were there any modifications on that?
Do you have the contracts in front of you where you could?
I don't have it in front of me, but I think that Birch is going to.
Because I believe as the work gradually, as the time of the work gradually increased, the hourly cap would increase. In other words, starting out the investigation, it was impossible to anticipate the level of cooperation during the course of the investigation from some of the witnesses. So if you assume that there would be great cooperation with the witnesses in terms of interviewing and speaking and being voluntarily speaking with you, it doesn't take as much time. So after getting into it, realizing that most of the witnesses were not willing to speak or willing to turn over evidence or information, quickly you figure out that this is going to take a little more time than originally anticipated. And because of that, you have to compensate for those hours.
That's why there was a compensation on your extension?
Yes, sir. The caps.
A cap. Now, did Mrs. Willis, did Ms. Willis review your invoices with you when you would submit them?
Never.
Did anyone ever question whether or not you worked 24 hours in one day and billed 24 hours in one day?
I've never worked 24 hours in one day and billed 24 hours in one day.
Okay.
And I'm glad you asked me that question because I'd like the opportunity to talk about that.
I think you should go ahead.
So if you look at that invoice where it says 24 hours in one day, it actually doesn't say one day. If you look at the top of the invoice, it says date completed. The date that's reflected on that invoice reflects the date that the work was completed. It doesn't say when it started. It just says this is the date that is completed. So if you go through the invoices, probably around the first 5 or 6, you'll see that that's the billing format. I would bill only after that particular task has been completed. That's why you see a 24-hour period with the one day there. I kind of wish some of the experts who had opined on that had called me and asked me the question, but there was never a billing of 24 hours in one day. Now, probably around the 6th or 7th invoice, you see the format changed. I started using a range so that it got less confusing, right?
I'm confused, so maybe you can correct it.
Okay.
In Exhibit 14, you've got down a specific day.
Mm-hmm.
Prepared cases for pretrial, November the 5th, 2021, 24 hours at $250 an hour, 6,000. Now, this wasn't about a range. It was about the work that you did on November the 5th. 2021.
No, Mr. Gillen, look at the top of the invoice where it says date completed.
What I want you to do, Mr. Wade, is focus on the date that you have down there and tell the court what you billed for on November the 5th, 2021. I thought it was already in. I thought 14 is in.
Again, Mr. Gillen, it says completed date completed. The dates that you see here are the dates that work was completed. So on November the 5th, I completed the task of preparing the cases for pretrial. That's the date I completed it.
Just
then
read,
it took me.
Just read if you would. Then my question was, read out loud the entry for November the 5th, 2021, and how many hours you billed that day. Just do that for me if you would.
I can't do that.
Excuse me, I believe the witness is entitled to answer his question. That certainly wasn't the question that Mr. Dillon asked.
All right, well, the question now is to read a certain entry. So.
Just read into the record, Mr. Wade, on November the 5th, 2021, how many hours did you bill the citizens of Fulton County for on that day? Just read it out, please.
I completed the task on November 5th, 2021. 24 hours was billed at $250.
Now, when you talked about your relationship with Ms. Willis, and your testimony is that it began in 2022. You remember that testimony?
No, sir. Our relationship began in
Your romantic
2019.
relationship began in 2022?
Yes, sir.
That's your testimony?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, when you were re-upped on this contract, you had a romantic relationship already established with Miss Willis, yes or no?
In 2022?
Yeah, when
Yes,
you were
sir.
re-upped on November the 15th, 2022, you had a romantic relationship with Miss Willis.
I signed the second contract. Yes, sir.
Answer my question, please.
I'm not going to use the words re-up.
Signed up on the we re-up or whatever you want to call it, your contract on November the 15th, 2022, you had a romantic relationship already existing with Miss Willis, yes or no?
I signed the contract, the second contract, yes, sir, during the course of a romantic relationship.
Yes or no, you had a romantic relationship with her at the time that you signed up the extension on November the 15th, 2022, yes or no?
The answer to that question is yes.
Thank you. Now, this was before the special purpose grand jury released a report. Isn't that correct? Correct?
Are you asking me if it's before the work was completed or before the special purpose grand jury actually publicly released the report?
When they
Those are
released
two
the
different.
report. The relationship with Miss Willis already existed when the special purpose grand jury released its report, correct?
At the time the report was released, yes, sir. But
And-
you understand that the report had, the work had been completed prior to the release of the report. You understand that?
And your relationship with Miss Willis, of course, was prior to the indictment in this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, if I may just ask my folks over here whether there's anything I need to clean up on. That's all the questions, Your Honor, I have. Thank you.
Your Honor, I do have a question.
Well, Mr. State, I think we went through.
No, I had asked you for permission, but he was gonna go first on this, and then I was going to follow up. That's the deferment, was to allow him to go first. That's what I thought I had asked for.
All right, with the understanding next time, we're going to keep going in order and not skip around the order. All right.
But that's why I brought it up, because I thought that's what.
Okay. All right, Mr. Sato.
I'm going to try to keep my questions very specific.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to also, of course, try not to go back into specific questions that have already been asked. Okay?
Yes, sir.
When did your relationship with Miss Willis end?
2023.
Can you give us an approximation of, not by date, but by month?
Summer 2023. Forgive me. I'm a man. We don't do the date thing. Summer 23, I would say June, maybe.
Okay. Using the euphemism personal relationship, did you have any personal relationship at all with Miss Willis after the summer of 2023?
I want to make sure that I'm answering your question. Are you, because
Let me rephrase, if I might. The way it has been characterized in, for example, the response of the state, and I believe in your affidavit, is there's a difference between a personal relationship and a professional relationship, correct?
yes, sir.
Okay. I'm not talking about a professional relationship. I'm talking about a personal relationship. Have you had a personal relationship at all, and you know what I mean by that, after the summer of 2023?
Are you asking me if I had intercourse with the district attorney?
I was trying not to, but I guess if you're going to characterize it as that, the answer would be,
The answer would be no.
so it's been purely professional since the summer of 2023.
So that's where we're having issues.
Okay, you'll have to explain, because I don't know what the issue would be.
No, I will explain to you.
Thank you.
You say personal. We're very good friends, probably closer than ever because of these attacks. But if you're asking me about specific intercourse, the answer is no.
How about if I change it from intercourse to romantic?
No.
Okay. During the direct examination, you made a statement, at least I believe I heard it correctly, that you, personal relationship, and now I'm talking about that characterized the sexual romantic relationship, was not a secret. Is that correct?
Wait. If you're asking me if people knew that we were having sex, no, they didn't.
I'm asking you whether the people knew that you were dating, whether you were romantically involved. You said that it was not a secret.
Oh, it wasn't a secret. It was just private. My mother knew, obviously.
Did anyone in the district attorney's office that has worked on this case know that you were dating or had a romantic relationship with District Attorney Willis?
I don't know what they knew.
Well, did you tell anyone?
No,
Do you have any knowledge of whether Ms. Willis revealed it to anyone?
I have no clue.
Okay. So as far as you know from personal knowledge, no one in the DA's team knew, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So if it was a legitimate relationship, is there any particular reason why it was kept secret or private?
It wasn't kept secret. It was kept private.
And the purpose for that was?
It's what we chose to do.
I'm asking you why, though, not just because you chose. Why, if you're dating someone, why keep it private?
So, a few reasons. The first one is, and I want to say this respectfully in the right way, there are some people who are in the public eye who just don't like it, don't wish to be there. I have tried to have lunch or dinner with her publicly, and I can't count the number of people that would approach the table or would accost us as we're trying to walk into a restaurant and just have lunch or have a meal. It is not secret, it is private. We don't want the world asking questions or interrupting that time. So We weren't trying to keep anything a secret, Mr. Sadal. There's nothing secret or salacious about having a private life. Nothing.
I'm not suggesting that there was. I'm asking the questions. When you went on the various trips that have been outlined by both Mr. Gillen and by Ms. Merchant, did anyone in the district attorney's office know that the two of you were traveling on personal trips together?
To my knowledge, Mr. Sadal, no.
Okay. And again, that was for privacy, according to your testimony.
Privacy, yes, sir.
Okay. Did you and Ms. Willis go to the Hapeville condo prior to your relationship starting the beginning of 2022?
Prior to having physical contact, prior to having intercourse, did we go to the Hapeville condo?
Again, you keep going to intercourse. I'm trying not to, but fine. The answer to that, my question would be yes. Did you and Ms. Willis go to the Hapeville condo prior to what I want to say November 1st of 2021?
Yes.
Okay. And the purpose for going to the Hapeville condo with Ms. Willis prior to 2021 would have been what? Or prior to November 1 of 2021?
Could have been any number of things, because at that time,
That's what I'm asking. So tell me.
yeah, could have been any number of things, because at that time, she had a friend living in that condo. Miss Yurdy lived in that condo.
Okay. Maybe it was my question was poorly worded. Let me try again. Your answer is yes, prior to November 1st of 2021, you would have gone to the Hapeville condo and been there with Miss Willis, correct?
Yes.
And you would have been there, as you indicated, for many reasons, right?
Yes.
Can you give me, just list a few of the reasons?
Miss Yurdy resided there, went to visit her, maybe went to talk about a document that I received.
You would go to the condo to talk about a document that you received?
Absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
Absolutely.
Any other reasons?
None come to mind.
None come to mind.
No, sir.
And would you say that was frequent? When I say frequent, do you think prior to November 1st of 2021, you were at the condo more than 10 times?
No, sir.
So it'd be less than 10 times?
Yes, sir.
So if phone records were to reflect that you were making phone calls from the same location as the condo before November 1st of 2021, and it was on multiple occasions, the phone records would be wrong?
If phone records reflected that, yes, sir.
They'd be wrong.
They'd be wrong.
Okay. Where did you live during that time period?
The same place I live now.
Which is not in Hapeville, correct?
It is not in Hapeville.
It is north of Atlanta, the city of Atlanta, correct?
It is.
Okay. And any other reasons why you would be in the Hapeville area on multiple occasions prior to November 1st of 2021?
Let's see. The Porsche experience is there.
I'm sorry?
The Porsche experience is there.
Okay, so that would have been one. Any other reason?
Yes, sir. The airport is there.
Airport in Hapeville.
Yes, sir. Delta Airlines is
Okay.
headquartered there. Let's see. Restaurants there.
Okay. If that's your recollection, that's fine. I'm not asking you to try to remember everything, but if that's
okay.
Okay. Did you discuss your affidavit filed in connection with the response with Ms. Willis?
No, sir.
Did you know, of personal knowledge, whether Ms. Willis reviewed your affidavit before it was included with the response?
I have no clue.
So as far as you know, personal knowledge, Ms. Willis did not know what you said in the affidavit.
I didn't give it to her.
That's what I said. You have no personal knowledge.
No personal knowledge.
And as far as you know, no one else has told you that she did or didn't.
I hadn't asked anyone.
We've kind of worked this up a little bit, and the numbers could be off. But according to our numbers, $10,000, give or take, would have been reflected on your credit card statements in connection with things of potential benefit to Ms. Willis, okay? I want you just to assume that. Assuming that there was $10,000 that you had on your credit cards, is it your testimony that Ms. Willis paid you back $10,000 in cash? Not acting about.
Object, the characterization of $10,000 for Ms. Willis's travel, I don't believe is an accurate reflection of what the numbers, at least the summary that I've been provided by the defense would be like. I think that's joint travel. Is that right, Mr. Sato? I'm sorry.
No, it's not joint travel. But all I'm trying to understand, I'll rephrase because I don't want to get bogged down on specific numbers. You would have received thousands of dollars in cash from Ms. Willis, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the thousands of dollars in cash from Ms. Willis, do you know, I'm not asking you whether she took it out of her pocketbook or she took it out of a suitcase. I'm saying, do you know the source of the cash?
Just that, out of her pocketbook. Yes, sir.
You don't know where she obtained the cash.
I didn't ask her.
And the whole time that she was paying you in cash, you never said, hey, why do you have this amount of cash?
Why would, Mr. Sadow, in my practice, people come into my law firm all the time with cash. I never question where they got it.
Yeah, but we're talking not about people that come into your law firm. We're talking about the district attorney of Fulton County who, I'm assuming, receives a paycheck. She doesn't get paid in cash.
So just like you assumed, I assumed she got it from her paycheck. I don't know.
Okay. But of course, it's already been, and I'm not going to go back into it. You've not seen any records indicating withdrawals of cash from Ms. Willis at all.
Why would I ask her?
I didn't
No,
ask.
sir.
All I said is you haven't, right?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, can you explain why you filed for divorce one day after you were hired by Ms. Willis? You filed on November 2nd of 2021. You're hired on November 1st of 2021. Why the day after?
You mean one day before? So
You filed for divorce one day after you were hired, right?
okay, I'll answer your question.
Okay, please.
So in 2015, when my wife had the affair, we had a conversation that we would divorce right then. Again, the better practice, at least for my children at the time, was to stay in place until the youngest could graduate and matriculate into college. We did that. When she graduated, matriculated into college, at the time, my wife had moved back and forth to Houston, to Texas. So she's in Texas. We take our child off to college. We come back to Georgia for a brief period of time. Divorce gets filed. She gets served. There we go. Now, the reason that date was selected.
Yes, sir. That's what I asked.
The specific reason that specific date was selected was because she was only in town for a brief.
Your Honor, this is attorney-client privilege. Why he decided to file his...
And why do you have the right to object on his behalf for attorney-client privilege?
Because...
Well, I don't make a formal objection.
All right, there we go. And
I believe that he's already attempted to answer this question and there was no privilege raised. So he's given a partial answer and now he's about to finish that. So first of all, I don't think it's covered by attorney-client privilege and I'll deal with that if you want me to. But otherwise, he's already answered part of it. So he doesn't get to say, now I'm going to stop. So.
well, it was a long preface, but I don't think it ever actually got to what might have been at issue there. So if you can lay the foundation, we'll deal with the objection.
Okay. Take a step back, okay? You realize that an attorney-client privilege is the privilege of the client, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you, in connection with your representation, at least it's been proffered to the court by Mr. Bradley, that it's up to you to decide whether you want to raise the privilege, right?
Yes, sir.
It's not up to Mr. Bradley.
Yes, sir.
So you have the power, in order to get to the truth of the matter, you have the power to waive the attorney-client privilege, do you not?
I believe that's an inappropriate question. The privilege is there.
Whether he uses it or not, it doesn't matter why. Mr. Sato, I think if we're trying to get to the answer to your question, let's figure out whether it covers the question you were trying to get to.
And if I may finish, and your position is you have no intention of waiving your attorney-client privilege, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so now, can you answer the question why you waited until November 2nd, the day after you were hired by Ms. Willis, to file for divorce?
I can.
Okay.
So, again, Joycelyn had relocated to Texas, and she had been in Texas for months. She was only here for a brief period of time to drive my daughter's car back with her. And when she came here to do that, I was able to then get her served.
Okay, so your answer as to why you waited until the day after you were hired by Ms. Willis, which would be November 1st, 2021, to file the complaint for the divorce on November 2nd, 2021, your testimony under oath is because your wife was here. But had not been here in October, had not been here in September, had not been here in August of 2021.
She had been in Texas taking care of her ailing mother and
your testimony,
an aging father. So the first opportunity that I had after speaking with my lawyers to take care of that was the date it was filed and served, because she happened to be here. It had nothing to do with, that was purely coincidental, that contract.
I understand it's purely coincidence, your testimony.
Yes, sir, and understand that this was by agreement between she and I, she being my wife and I, that we would divorce when the children matriculated out, and that there would actually have been an agreement attached to the filing. It became apparent that the agreement wasn't going to happen, and things got a little contentious. So that's when the privilege will kick in, and I was forced to do it when I did it.
So if I understood correctly, again, you tell me if I'm wrong, is it your testimony that your wife was not in Atlanta, Georgia, or the metro area throughout October of 2021?
No.
That's
In
not your testimony?
In October of 2021, she was back and forth between here and Texas.
So she was, at least on some occasions, in the Atlanta area.
But that was during the time when we were working through the consent agreement that fell through.
Again, I think we're pretty far afield on relevance. The answer to the question about the timing of the divorce filing.
Understood, Ms. Cross. Ms. Sato, where are we going from here?
We're about to finish this area, since I'm not going to be able to go any further about, if we want to call the X, we'll call the X for that purpose.
Well, we might have to discuss whether that's a collateral issue altogether.
No, I'm just saying if. I didn't say we will, but we'll.
Okay.
All right, so you said that you were aware of the contracts that Mr. Bradley and Mr. Campbell had with the Fulton County District Attorney's Office, correct?
Yes, sir.
And how did you become aware of those?
Just through conversation, they
With
told
who?
me.
Conversation with who?
Mr. Bradley and Mr. Campbell.
So you were discussing matters with Mr. Bradley which were not related to attorney-client privilege, correct?
Related to the contract, yes.
Okay, but you were having conversations that would not, even though, if I understood correctly, Mr. Bradley was your attorney at the time, correct?
At what time?
At the time that Mr. Bradley received his contract from Fulton County, which would have been beginning of January, or in January of 2021, right?
Is that the date of his contract?
Pretty close.
I don't know what the date of his contract was, but if it was after the date of the filing of divorce, then yeah.
I'm not talking about after the date of the filing of divorce. It's been represented to the court that you had an attorney-client relationship with Mr. Bradley from 2015 forward.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
When Mr. Bradley received his contract with Fulton County, that was in 2021, correct?
I don't know.
We can prove that through other evidence. But at the time that Mr. Bradley was doing work for Fulton County, if I understand, you still had an attorney-client privilege, at least you're claiming one, with Mr. Bradley, correct?
Yes.
So when you talk to Mr. Bradley about matters with his contract in Fulton County, those were not covered by your attorney-client privilege, correct?
They were not.
Okay, and that meant that not all communications with Mr. Bradley were covered by attorney-client privilege, correct?
Well, those certainly weren't.
Well, but my question was, not all communications with Mr. Bradley were covered by, at least as you've been represented to the court, by the attorney-client privilege, correct?
Those communications were not.
So there were communications outside of the attorney-client privilege, correct? With Mr.
Yes.
Bradley.
If you're asking me if I ever communicate with him outside of the attorney-client privilege, the answer is yes. I've
Okay.
communicated with him outside the attorney-client privilege.
Let's finish this up. And did you call it Roman number 4, which is defense? Okay. In defense exhibit number 4, and Mr. Gillen went over with you your responses to certain interrogatories on May the 30th, 2023. Remember that?
Yes, sir.
Not going back into those. The words in the interrogatories are already in evidence, so we're not going to do that. But the ones that we've gone into, there were 2 of them. And your answer to both of those was none, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, on January 25th of 2024,
Yes, sir.
you again were in a position that you answered those same interrogatories, the 2 that we're talking about. I can get specific if we need to, but as long as we understand we're talking about the same 2,
Yes,
right?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. And they are in defense exhibit number 6, and they are interrogatories number 4 and number 5.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I want you to be able to see it. So it's a defense exhibit number 6.
I don't.
See, you have 6 up there? I'm told that you have 6.
Okay. Here we are.
Okay. You would agree with me that in defense exhibit number 6, and we're talking about interrogatories of January 25, 2024,
Yes, sir.
that as to interrogatory number 4, that's the same interrogatory, same words that were in the interrogatory that Mr. Gillen went over, which was dated May 30th of 2023, correct?
Yes, sir.
And your original response in defense exhibit number 6 was none, correct?
Yes, sir.
Your updated response was the plaintiff declines to respond to this interrogatory and asserts his privilege pursuant to OCGA section 24-5-505, correct?
Yes, sir.
You know that 24-5-505 breaks down into two privileges, right?
Which is why I was specific. I said I asserted the privacy privilege.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. But in your updated response, there's no reference to privacy, correct?
Yes, there is in the code section 24-5-505.
Okay, but it also
reference to privacy.
Just go with me, okay? That code section says, does it not, no party or witness shall be required to testify as to any matter which may incriminate or tend to incriminate such party or witness, or which shall tend to bring infamy, disgrace, or public contempt upon such party or witness. You'd agree with that, right?
I'm not reading it.
I'm sorry?
I'm not reading it. I don't have it in front of me.
If I may.
Mr. Sano, we can, I can take judicial notice that is what the rule says if you want to ask him any follow-up questions.
Okay. Thank you. You are not claiming that your answer to number 4, interrogatory number 4, on January 25th, 2024, incriminates you, that is, as in Fifth Amendment privilege, right?
That's correct.
You're claiming the second part, that it would bring infamy, disgrace, or public contempt, correct?
I'm going to object to that. I don't think that's the full thing, but and also the witness doesn't have it in front of him, so I don't know how he could respond to that. He has said several times privacy is why he invoked that statutory.
Overruled.
I'm claiming privacy.
The privilege that you make reference to is to infamy, disgrace, or public contempt upon the witness, right? Or party. That's the section that you were relying on, correct?
If that's what it says, yes, sir.
Okay, look. I could show you, but I think the court has already indicated he can take judicial notice of the statute. So you assume that what I'm telling you is accurate, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How would an answer of none bring infamy, disgrace, or public contempt upon you?
So, as I explained in direct of Mr. Roman's counsel, the minute she elected to intervene into my divorce proceeding, I then started to understand the bigger picture, which was that all the attorneys in the election interference case were colluding with Joycelyn's divorce lawyer. And because of that, I said, privacy. I don't want my divorce proceeding to bleed into this criminal proceeding. I just didn't want that.
So you raised a privilege, if I understand, that indicated that your answer would bring infamy, disgrace, or public contempt upon you, right?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the relevance of this. It's been asked and answered several times.
Mr. Seda, where are we heading with this?
I think I can finish that up by saying you didn't say none again. You asserted a privilege, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you did the same thing, did you not, with number 5?
That's correct.
That is, you didn't say none again, right?
Correct.
Okay. Is the answer to the interrogatory number 4, if you have it in front of you, is the answer none? Is that the truth?
The answer is, to that interrogatory, is as I placed it at the time I responded, sir.
I'm
That's
asking
the
you
answer.
now, is the answer to that interrogatory
The answer
none?
The answer is still privilege.
All right. So he's apparently electing to apply the same privilege, Mr. Seda, to that exact same question.
And I have a case which indicates that we can get beyond that if the court deems that appropriate.
And to what end? To what end? Where?
That the privilege actually does not apply and he must answer the question.
And where does that get us? Even if he answers the question, hasn't he already kind of said everything he has to say about the nature of the relationship, how long it lasted, when did it end?
No, I think it would prove, I think if he is forced or compelled to answer the question, he will either answer it falsely by saying none, or he answers it truthfully by saying yes, and then telling us what it is. That's what I believe. That's why I'm asking.
But the interrogatory you're referring to, though, the question contained there,
Two interrogatories, yes, sir.
it's the entertaining one, it's whether there were other relationships, right?
With a specific language that's in the interrogatories.
Sure. Haven't you already covered that in all the other questions that we've had so far?
Yeah, but we have, but again, the court could, if I could require or compel an answer from him as to whether his answer would still be none, then we would know whether or not he was telling the truth. Now, if the answer is no, then obviously there was a time in the past where he was not. It simply requires him to now answer under oath what he refused to answer and claimed, what I might suggest, is a bogus privilege, and that you can pierce that privilege because it's a material fact in connection with this case. Again, it's a call that Your Honor makes. I have case law that says you can do that, but it's your discretion.
Ms. Cross?
Your Honor, Mr. Clay's been on the stand now for several hours. He's been asked and answered very personal questions that cover the issues. Mr. Seda was making an argument, and this is probably an argument to make for the later to the court and not a question to the panel.
So as I see it, the only relevance these interrogatories have to this case really whatsoever would be as either prior inconsistent or consistent statements. And to that end, I think the question has been put to him again and again and again. He's answered how he believes he felt his answer should be and why he answered a certain way. And as it goes to credibility, I think at this point we're arguing weight, and I don't really see the value in pushing this issue further. So,
All right, well, just for the record, the case that I was going to refer
Please
to
do.
is State versus Wakefield at 324 Georgia Appeal 587. And specifically, let's see, it would be 590, in which they talk about this specific privilege. This is a 2013 case. And then they footnote to footnote 3. And footnote 3 says, there are times when the materiality of the evidence outweighs the testimonial privilege. And it goes and explains what that is. That's what I'm bringing up.
and I see what you're saying, that we could say that you need to answer the question regardless of the privilege you asserted. At this point, though, I think we've covered that ground and we're ready to move on.
Okay. Based on that, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McCulloch, anything on behalf of Mr. Floyd? Moving through defense counsel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm looking behind you. Mr.
thought so,
McCulloch,
okay.
on behalf of Mr. Floyd, he's elbowing you, sir. Okay. Mr. Cromwell.
Nothing, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Cross.
Thank you. Mr. Wade, have you still got exhibit number 14 in front of you? The one with all of the invoices, I believe.
I believe I have them all.
All right. So you were asked, Mr. Wade, about a couple of the invoice items. And your testimony, I think, was that the percentage of income post special counsel appointment in November 2021, the percentage of your income roughly after that time was about 50-50, Fulton versus other income from your law practice, correct?
Roughly, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. How about your time? I'm interested in the percentage of your time from November 2021 to, let's say, the close of the special purpose grand jury when it was dissolved in January 2023. Can you estimate for us the percentage of your time that was spent on Fulton County work versus other work?
Oh, gosh. 99% of the time here in this building, working on this case.
All right. It was, as I understood your testimony, it was an intense period in terms of hours while that special purpose grand jury was meeting, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And who was head or manager of the election integrity case during that time for the district attorney's office?
I was.
You were coordinating the efforts?
Yes, ma'am.
And those efforts included not just the proceedings that were happening in this building, correct?
That's correct.
We don't need to go all through it, but is your representation that 99.9% of the time, let's restrict it to 2022, 99% of your professional working time was devoted to this case?
Yes, ma'am.
And the remainder, whatever it was to some of your other cases that were ongoing?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. 2022, I want to focus on that a little bit because if we are looking at, I believe, the financial affidavits, do you have those in front of you as well?
I do.
The financial affidavit that was filed in your divorce case in January 2022, you estimated your monthly income at that time was $14,000 a month, right?
In 22?
January 22.
Yes, ma'am.
January 23, what'd that number come to?
9,000.
What about 2024?
I don't know.
Is that there in front of you? Is that one, that's not one of the ones that's there in front of you?
No, ma'am.
All right. So as reflected in those financial affidavits, your income decreased as a result of your work in this case, correct?
Significantly.
The structure of your firm, we talked a lot about that, and I don't want to go through it anymore, but then we need to. But 2022, the structure of your firm changed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. In the early part of 2022, there were 3 of you. You and Mr. Campbell and Mr. Bradley, you split expenses, is that right?
That's correct.
And you profit shared among yourselves, correct?
Correct.
Right. After Mr. Bradley left the firm, then there were just 2 of you, correct?
That is the cause of the significant change. Yes, ma'am.
So now you have 2 people bringing in income, correct?
Correct.
And one of those people, you, is spending almost all of your time devoted to this election integrity case, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And your income from this election integrity case is less than what it was the year before.
Yes, ma'am.
We talked about the monthly caps. We didn't talk about it. There was talk about the monthly cap that was included in your contracts, indicating there was a certain threshold that you could reach, number of hours a month, and over that amount you were not going to be compensated, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And you kind of smile when you said that. That's a little bittersweet there, isn't it?
That's bitter.
All right. Exhibit 14, is that still there in front of you?
It is.
I want you to take a look, please. That's a collection of exhibits that includes all of your invoices as was represented. I want you to take a look at invoice number 9.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that there in front of you?
I have it.
Invoice number 9, Mr. Wade, indicates that you performed hours of work that you were not compensated for because your cap had been reached.
Yes, ma'am.
I want you to take up, and what did you do in those circumstances? When the hours that you worked per month were more than the cap that was in your contract that you were permitted to be paid for?
I was forced to lose that time. I didn't get paid for it.
Okay. And that's what exhibit number 9 shows?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And in exhibit number 9, you've got a task, hours that were completed, and you just didn't bill for it. You noted the time and then a 0 beside it because you didn't bill the county for that time.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What about exhibit number, invoice number 13? Can you flip to that for me?
I have it.
Is that a similar situation?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And what is it on invoice number 13?
This invoice makes me cry. There's so many hours here that I worked that I couldn't get paid for. So,
And you work those hours anyway, Mr. Wade?
oh, absolutely. This is not the type of job that you could walk away from just because you're not getting paid for it. I think there's some professional rules of responsibility to an attorney who's engaged in a case. You have to see it through. So it's not like I could just throw my hands up and say, well, I reached my monthly cap, I'm done. I can walk away. I can't do that. This is ongoing, it's constant, and I have to do the work.
Can you look at invoice number 23 for me there in exhibit number 14?
Yes, ma'am.
Does that reflect a similar situation, the hours worked that you were not compensated for?
Yes, ma'am.
Invoice number 24 and 27, can you take a look at those and let us know if that reflects the same situation?
Are you trying to depress me?
No,
Look at
no.
the money I'm
sorry.
It's the same, yes.
Okay. And there's no workaround to that? You didn't attempt to work around that contractual cap on your hours?
Oh, no, ma'am.
All right. You were asked a lot of questions, Mr. Wade, about the affidavit that was submitted, correct? Do you recall those questions?
I'm sorry, I'm stuck on this invoice. You know, if I was going to get a benefit, I'd like that benefit. That's the one I want. That didn't happen.
That didn't happen?
Okay.
All right. And there was no renegotiating your contract to reflect that those hours should be paid or anything?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right. Do you have your affidavit there in front of you?
I do.
The affidavit, of course, was attached to and provided in support of the state's response to Mr. Roman's motion, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And you prepared that affidavit.
I did.
You signed that affidavit.
I did.
All of the allegations and the representations in that affidavit are true. Is that right, Mr. Wade?
Every one of them.
Every one of them. You were asked a lot of questions about our line number 34. Can you turn to that for me, please? It's on page 4 of that affidavit.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you read it out loud for me, please?
The district attorney and I are both financially independent professionals. Expenses for personal travel were roughly divided equally between us. At times, I have made and purchased travel for District Attorney Willis and myself from my personal funds. At other times, District Attorney Willis has made and purchased travel for she and I from her personal funds. Examples of District Attorney Willis's purchasing plane tickets for she and I with her personal funds for our personal travel are attached.
Funds, Mr. Wade. As you understand the term funds, does that include cash?
Yes.
Does that include credit?
Yes.
Does that include reimbursements?
Yes.
You didn't represent in your affidavit, Mr. Wade, that you were including all of the receipts from funds or travel expenses that were paid on your behalf by District Attorney Willis, correct?
That's correct.
You had, I think your conversation with Ms. Merchant was, you produced the receipt that you had.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you aware of any other receipts? Well, I'm going to ask it this way, may I put you on the third sticker? That's all right, I'm going to write it on there. I'm going to mark this as state exhibit number 1. You testify, Mr. Wade, that District Attorney Willis purchased and funded the entire trip to Belize. That was her treat to you for a birthday?
Yes, ma'am.
And you testified that she purchased the plane tickets for you, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And while you may not have had the receipts on hand when you filled out the affidavit, because they weren't in your possession, are you aware now that there are receipts and that it reflects that the district attorney?
This is going to go into evidence. We'd like to look at it first.
I've got a copy. Do you remember, Mr. Wade, approximately how much, and that's again state exhibit number 1, may I push this down? Do you remember how much the flight was for you, your flight to Belize? And if you don't, I'm not tendering it for you, I'm just asking you to take a look at that and see if that refreshes your recollection as to the amount that that plane ticket cost that was extended by District Attorney. You may keep it. You keep it. Does that refresh your recollection, Mr. Wade?
It does. Thank you.
Approximately how much was the amount of the ticket that District Attorney Willis purchased for your travel to Belize?
$887.35.
And I'm not tendering it, Your Honor, but I will leave it with the court reporter for reference. All right, Mr. Wade. Your testimony here in court today and consistent with your affidavit was that the personal relationship, I think we called it dating today as well, the personal or dating relationship between you and the district attorney began sometime in early 2022, March, I think was your testimony, is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. And that March date isn't included in the affidavit. The affidavit is less specific, but that was your testimony today?
Yes, ma'am.
And that there was no personal or dating relationship prior to that time, right?
None.
Right. Mr. Wade, I'm sorry. I'm going to direct your attention to 2020. In 2020, were you dating the district attorney?
No.
2020, that was during the COVID pandemic, correct?
It was.
Was there a situation for you, Mr. Wade, that made you particularly vulnerable during the COVID period?
Yes, ma'am. In 2020, and a portion of 21, I was battling cancer, and that prevented me from pretty much leaving environments that aren't sterile, and I had health on my mind.
You were particularly cautious during that time.
Yes, ma'am.
Were you dating anyone in 2020?
No, ma'am.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Wade. That's all I have.
Ms. Merchant, recross on those points only.
Yes, thank you. All right, Mr. Wade. The state asked you about how much money you're making now versus before, and you said you're making significantly less since you've started working for Fulton County, correct?
Well, I did say that, but what we're talking about is because the Now, at this point, the splitting of the financial obligations in the firm are, now there are two people carrying the weight of three. So that would scale back on the amount of income, right? Amount of profit.
Well, you're splitting the profits 50-50 though, instead of 1/3, correct?
The profits, yes.
Okay. So, but you did testify that you're making significantly less now. We heard about it for a few minutes. Significantly less now that you work for Fulton County, right?
Yes.
Okay. Would you agree with me that $236,000 is more than $184,000?
Absolutely.
Would you agree with me that $262,000 is more than $236,000?
Absolutely.
All of these years, despite you saying that you were a three-way partner with Wade and Campbell and Bradley, and now a two-way partner with Campbell, all of your corporate tax returns are filed in the law firm of Nathan Wade, though, correct?
My returns, yes, ma'am.
Yes, for your law firm.
Well, for my law firm, because I also have personal returns.
Right, and I'm not talking about your personal returns. I'm talking about your business returns.
Yeah, but the question contemplates that my bring home money is more or less. So I want to be clear that is reflected in my personal returns.
I didn't ask you anything about bring home money, though. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
What I'm talking about is your question was the portion of my testimony dealing with earning significantly less money.
No, my question is I'll just break it down. During 2019, you filed your business returns. I'm not talking about your personal, your business returns for the law firm of Nathan Wade only, correct?
I filed personal and business. Yes, ma'am.
And even though you said you were partners with Bradley and Campbell later on, you filed your business returns not with them, but as a solo practitioner, correct?
I see where we're going. There's a different return for that Wade, Bradley, Campbell entity.
And I'm not asking about that. What I'm asking about is during the years 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022, you filed a business return for the law firm of Nathan Wade.
Yes, ma'am.
And in 2019, you said that the law firm of Nathan Wade made $184,000, correct?
No, I don't know.
Does that sound familiar? Does that sound about like what you made in 2019 and reported on your taxes as a business law firm?
If that's what's on the return, yes, ma'am, you're right.
Okay, and I'm happy I can bring those up. I've got one copy. I'm not planning on admitting them because of tax returns, but okay. All right, may I approach, Judge?
Yeah.
Thank you. So in 2019, gross profit for the law firm of Nathan Wade is $184,000, correct?
Let's see.
The second line, number 2, gross profit.
Yes, ma'am. 184,824. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then in 2020, you also filed Nathan Wade, attorney at law, and your gross profit was $230,000, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And in 2021, you also filed as a solo Nathan Wade PC attorney at law, and your gross profit was $236,000, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And then in 2022, you filed as a solo practitioner Nathan Wade, and your gross income was $262,000, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I'm not getting into business. You've got your official. But nowhere in these documents do you document that you received cash payments from Ms. Willis, correct?
I don't. I hadn't looked through them. I would be surprised if there were something in there that said that.
Do you want to look through them?
Listen to the answer. I'd be shocked if there was something in there that said that I received some cash from Ms. Willis.
Okay. But there is itemized expenditures for travel in here. You did itemize that.
I didn't itemize anything.
Your accountant itemized it.
I hope so.
But you're responsible for your taxes, even if your accountant files them, right?
I agree.
And so you itemized your expenses for travel on all these documents, but you did not itemize, you didn't put anything in there about you being reimbursed for half of that travel.
Well, those are business returns.
Yes, you used your business card to pay for the travel, right?
But I wouldn't put a personal expense on a business return.
But you used a business card to pay for these personal travel.
I use a business card to pay for everything. And what I do is turn over the statement to the accountant, and the accountant then says, okay, this expense, that's personal. We'll put that over here. This expense, that's business. We'll put that over here. and they reconcile it. So you wouldn't find a reimbursement from Ms. Willis on a business return,
Okay, so they're not anywhere there.
nor would you find, well, go ahead.
No, I'm just asking, so there's nowhere for any of that cash to be reconciled there, right?
On the business returns, no, ma'am.
Okay. We talked a lot about the financial affidavits. I know the state asked you a couple questions about them. You filed one in 2022. In that one, you stated that you only had $5,000 in cash, correct?
I believe you. Yes, ma'am.
That was sworn under oath.
At the time of the filing, yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then in January of 2024, you filed another one that also swore that you only had $5,000 in cash, correct?
At the time of the filing, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in 2022 and 2024, you only had $5,000 in cash.
At that time, yes, ma'am.
At that time,
And then you also, all of those interrogatories, I'm not going to go through them in painstaking detail, but every single interrogatory you filed, there are 4 of them, all verified ones. Every single one, you said you didn't have any cash stored in a safe, a safety deposit box, or any other location. Plaintiff rarely carries cash. If plaintiff does carry cash, it's a nominal amount, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we've got what? 2021, you said you don't have cash. 2023, you said you don't have cash. Again in 2023, you said you don't have cash. And then in 2024, you don't have cash, right?
So you're assuming that I received the cash and I stored it. I received the cash and I saved it.
Well, you didn't put it in the bank, right?
What's wrong with receiving the cash, Ms. Merchant, and spending it?
Nothing's wrong with it, but
So
you didn't
then
put it in the bank.
that would contemplate why the response is what it is on the interrogatories.
So you spent the cash. That's because before when it was asked, you said you didn't want to disclose where the cash was.
No.
Privacy reasons.
No, well, I said that if I were to store cash in my home, then why would I share that with the world, is what I said. I didn't say that I had some cash stored up in some place, because that's not the truth.
And you've talked a lot about this, I split with a third, I split with half. From the check you received from Fulton County, July 15th, 2022. So all the way back for July 2022, not a single check that you've received from Fulton County has gone into a joint banking account. Every single check has gone into your own personal banking account, correct?
All of them, with the exception of the checks that were going into the WBC firm, went into my business bank account, which is solely in my name.
Right, your WBC account that you're talking about, that account was closed though in June of 2022.
Correct.
So everything after June of 2022 was put in a Nathan Wade bank account, not a corporate bank account with partners.
I think the question right before that only needed a yes or no.
So no, ma'am. The checks were deposited into firm accounts, law firm accounts.
Law firm of Nathan Wade PC.
Yes, ma'am.
As a solo practitioner.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so they were not deposited into accounts with Campbell or Bradley.
No, ma'am, they were not.
Thank you.
However, there were checks written to Campbell and Bradley that will reflect the third.
And we've tried to get those bank records, but you've objected to those, correct?
You've tried to get what bank records?
We subpoenaed bank records and you've objected to all of those, right?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the relevance.
It's relevant if he's saying he has all these records, but yet we've tried to get them and he's trying to keep them from us, but he doesn't bring all of the records. And you can make an inference if there's law that says you can make an inference if some documents are within the party's control and they won't provide them, that there's an inference that they're not positive.
Ms. Cross.
Your Honor, there was no obligation for Mr. Wade to produce evidence that Ms. Merchant couldn't find an admissible way to produce. I believe it's irrelevant. We've covered the ground, and I object to any further questioning.
All right, I'll sustain that. Ms. Merchant, let's find some new ground here.
Okay, thank you. Are you willing to waive your privilege with Mr. Bradley so that he can testify?
I am not willing to waive attorney-client privilege.
Okay, thank you.
Only on the questions, the health questions that were asked. And I can ask it from here because it's very short. I don't want to get into the type of cancer. I don't want to get into the medical condition itself. Did I understand you to say that you had cancer in the year of 2020?
Yes, sir.
And you explained that because of that, in 2020, you kept yourself in a sterile environment?
I tried, yes, sir.
Now, what about 2021?
2021, just focusing on my health, trying to get back to myself.
You remember I asked you some questions about hate bill
Yes, sir.
and the condo?
Yes, sir.
And you indicated that prior to November 1st of 2021, you had spent time at the condo, the hate bill condo,
Yes, sir.
with Miss Willis, right?
Yes, sir.
And with someone else? You said Miss Yurty?
Miss Yurty, yes, sir.
Okay, so you were not concerned, that was not a sterile environment, was it?
Are you inferring that Miss Yurty and D.A. Willis is not sterile? Of course it's a sterile environment. It's a condo.
But don't you remember then I followed up and said, where else might you have been to show your cell phone records from Hateville? And you said, the airport, right? Not a sterile environment though, the airport, you agree?
It is not.
Okay, what about restaurants? Not a sterile environment, right?
They are not.
And the Porsche, you said something about a Porsche what?
The Porsche experience.
That doesn't sound very sterile to me. Is that a sterile environment?
You're inside your vehicle.
Yeah, but don't you mingle with others?
You can.
Yeah, and you were doing all that in 2021 before November 1st. That's what you testified to, correct?
Yes, sir.
So there's no reason why you couldn't be dating in 2021, is there?
You mean 2020, Mr. Sadow?
No, it says 2021.
All right.
Correct?
Dating? No.
No reason.
No reason.
Got it, thanks.
All right, Mr. Gillen? Okay. Mr. Stocks? Stockton, excuse me.
Just real briefly, you said you started dating early 2022, and you also used the term personal relationship, and there was no dating, no personal relationship prior to early 22. Is that correct?
Help me understand. I want to make sure I answer you. So let's be clear. 2022 was the start of any intimate sexual relationship with a district attorney.
Okay, and that's what I was wanting to
Okay.
make clear. In your affidavit, you used the term personal relationship.
Got it.
Today, you've used the term dating. And your testimony today is that that includes the term basically physical or sexual or intimate relationship. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And there was nothing, according to your testimony, there was none of that prior to early 20.
That is correct.
That's all I've got, Judge.
All right, not seeing anyone else. Ms. Cross, any regrets? All right, Ms. Merchant, can this witness be excused?
Judge, we'd ask to keep him under subpoena. We might need him to come back after the
All right. All right, you may step down, Mr. Wade, and please don't discuss your testimony with any other witnesses.
She mentioned subpoena, Judge. Let me just say this. There was an inference made that I was somehow evading service of a subpoena.
We can take that up. I don't think we need to have that on the record in this hearing. Understood, though.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Merchant, any other witnesses?
Yes, we will call Fani Willis.
All right, Ms. Cross.
Your Honor, I am going to adapt and remove to the motion to quash the district attorney. There's been now lots of testimony from Mr. Wade. I don't believe that there can be a showing for the need for the district attorney to testify as well. For all of the reasons that were cited in the state's motion to quash initially, it's a tremendously high burden to call opposing counsel. I don't believe it's been met, particularly given the cumulative nature that would be the subject of personal details that Mr. Wade's not testified to.
All right, Ms. Merchant, what do you think you can establish and have through the testimony of Ms. Willis? And let me stop there.
Conflict in the evidence, Judge. Now that Mr. Wade has testified, there's a conflict in multiple different issues. For all the different issues. The first one is the reimbursement issue. The cash that opens the door in and of itself to Ms. Willis testifying.
Well, what's the conflict there?
That he testified that he didn't have receipts, but we don't know if Ms. Willis has receipts. So that's one issue.
So we don't know. So there's no conflict. We just don't know.
We don't
right?
know, right? We
Okay.
don't
So it's a
know.
question, not a conflict. But what else do
That
we
is a
have?
question. So, and there's a lot of different issues with different reasons. The first one would be the receipts. You know, whether or not these cash payments occurred in payment receipts. The Belize trip, whether or not she paid for the entire thing in cash. Mr. Wade doesn't have knowledge of that. He couldn't remember a lot of things he couldn't remember. So now it goes to Ms. Willis, unfortunately. That he testified that she insists on paying her own way, gave him some cash, that's the quote, some cash. Miami trip, booked it, but thought it would balance out. A couple other trips that we didn't get any information about, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, all of those could be financial benefits. We don't know. He didn't know. He was very vague about that. Yuri, the best friend, testified that it happened in 2019. And now Mr. Wade has testified that the relationship began to become romantic in 2022, I think is where it's testified. So that is a conflict in and of itself. Right there, that's a big conflict. We've also got more receipts, but the biggest thing about the conflict is when the relationship started. He said he talked with Willis in the conference room after we filed our motion. He specifically didn't use the term cash in the affidavit, but he told anybody who would ask about the cash. And he specifically discussed this and the response. We have a right to go over these.
All right. So you've highlighted the areas you'd like to go into. I think the central question may be, what is it other than, I'm just really curious what she has to say, you have to put on the record. And so that's what I'd like to go through. Ms. Cross?
I think you've identified, Ms. Merchant hasn't itemized inconsistencies for you. She's identified areas of inquiry. The testimony in the record from Mr. Wade is it's not inconsistent, it's unrebutted. Excuse me. And so that I don't believe, given the testimony of Mr. Wade and the extent of the questioning of him, that there is any reason at this point to go into the district attorney herself. Again, I know the court's read all the pleadings. It really is such a compelling need, is the language of the case law, a compelling need to call opposing counsel. Given the record that's now before the court, I don't believe this one.
Your Honor, Mr. Dorn, very briefly, Ms. Willis needs to testify. Her best friend or good friend has directly contradicted the declaration that was made by Mr. Wade attached to the government's response. And it wasn't just the declaration of Mr. Wade, it was filed by the district attorney by and through her assistants here. She owns that. And so that affidavit is owned by her, and there are deep concerns that that affidavit is false, and that Ms. Willis knew it was false, and that she needs to come in here if she wants to tell us about the cash. First time we've heard about the cash. Oh yeah, we got cash. Don't have any deposit slips, don't have any record of it. Maybe Ms. Willis can say, here, all my records where I paid $10,000 in cash back to Mr. Wade. We need to know that. Also, Ms. Willis's financial disclosure. Let's not forget that. We're talking about two people who went to extraordinary lengths to hide their relationship, to hide the nature of their relationship. Extraordinary. The district attorney needs to take the stand, and she needs to tell this court and this courtroom why she filed financial disclosures in 2022 identifying prohibited sources, which Mr. Wade clearly is a prohibited source. Did you get gifts and benefits? Now we've seen all this. We've seen the trips. We've seen all of the things that total up to around $10,000 in cash. Yet on the financial declaration for 2021, which was filed in April of 2022, and the financial declaration for 2022, which was filed in April of 2023, there is no listing of any
any gifts whatsoever over $100 from a prohibited source. It cries out for her testimony. She needs to be able to get up here and say, why didn't you tell on the disclosure form, so that people will know the nature of the relationship between prohibitive sources and the public official, in this case, the district attorney, who happens to then make a decision to hire someone that ends up being paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, or his firm and him, and none of that is revealed. And the answer is, oh, it's unrebutted. He's explained it's all in cash. Let her get up and let's, and obviously, we are advocates in our position, but that explanation of cash does not pass the smell test or the straight face test. She needs to go on the record. She filed this motion with his declaration. We've seen what happened here. Now, I'll just 2 or 3 more sentences. We need to have the full picture, as we've gotten through Mr. Wade, of his false interrogatory. Serious business for a lawyer, or anybody. And then suddenly, he's changing. She files her financial declarations, same problem. We need her in here to go over all of this and to explain exactly what happened. We would ask the court that the court allow Ms. Willis to be called and interrogated on these matters.
And I will too, Your Honor.
Just a moment, Ms. Willis. So, Ms. Cross, I don't know if you want to speak with Ms. Willis now. It's sounding like maybe they're withdrawing the objection to the motion.
I believe the motion to,
Or does Ms. Willis want to take the lead here?
we'll withdraw the motion to quash Ms. Willis.
Based on the, I'm ready to go.
Okay, so the position of the district attorney at this point is that she's no longer contesting the subpoena. Ms. Merchant has called her as the next witness.
I would ask, I need 3 documents in front of me, and they're the 3 filings of Ms. Merchant.
3 filings.
Does anyone have the 3 filings of Ms. Merchant? Does the court have the 3 filings of Ms. Merchant?
When you say the filings, you mean like the pleadings?
The pleadings, yes, Your Honor.
Okay. I think we could locate those for you in the supplemental.
I want the one filed on January the 8th, the one filed immediately after we filed ours, and the final one.
If you want to take a break to get them, I can make a copy. I think we have one.
You know, the only copy I have is going to have my notes on it. So if we don't have a clean copy,
Have a 5-minute break, Your Honor.
Let's
I'll get
take
the documents.
all right.
I'll sit here and wait for him.
Did we elect someone who's actually making the copy? You got it? Okay. This Cross is yours. Give it tissue.
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the courtesy. They should be here in just a second.
All right, Ms. Cross, you can bring everyone in. Thank you.
Do you swear me, Your Honor?
You want
Do
to
you,
take that?
whomever would like to.
We got Deputy Scott usually. Well, let's go, wait a minute, let everyone get situated and then we'll go back on the record.
Sir, you have like tissue in here?
All right, we are back on the record. Deputy Scott, if you could swear in our next witness.
I would, and I do apologize. Anna, do me a favor. Put 'em on these smoothie glasses. After you swear, don't go like this. You can swear, you can go ahead and swear, so I don't hold it before. Yes, sir. District Attorney Fani, F-A-N-I. Last name is Willis.
Ms. Willis, how did you know to come into the courtroom right then?
There were people I was pacing in my office.
Okay.
And I heard someone yell, his testimony is done. It only made sense to me that I would be your next witness. And I've been very anxious to have this conversation with you today. So I ran to the courtroom.
So as soon as you heard that Mr. Wade was done testifying, that's when you just assumed you would be the next witness?
It only makes sense.
Did you listen to any of the testimony?
I've been in my office pacing, ma'am.
Did you listen to any of the arguments?
I did hear the arguments this morning. It's ridiculous to me that you lied on Monday, and yet here we still are. And I did listen to that argument.
All right, so that was it, just the argument, no testimony.
Right, I listened to the argument this morning where Adam Abadi, I thought, did an excellent job pointing out how dishonest you were with the court on Monday. And I'm actually surprised that the hearing continued. But since it did, here I am.
Great. So let's just talk about what you did in preparation for today. Did you meet with Mr. Wade at all? Once the motion was filed, did you meet with Mr. Wade and talk to him about the motion that I filed to disqualify you?
On this first January motion?
Yes.
I don't know if you could say talked about. I probably had some choice words about some of the things that you said that were dishonest within this motion. So I don't know that it was a conversation. As you know, Mr. Wade is a Southern gentleman. Me, not so much.
Okay, but my question was, did you have a conversation with
I
him?
didn't have a substantive conversation.
You did not.
I read this motion, skimmed it more so, and I probably said some choice things to him about some of the lies that were told.
Okay.
And then printed in the media because, you know, we used to be in a date and time where you had 60 Minutes and people did stories and they verified information, and you had this great reporting. But it seems today that a lawyer writes a lie and then it's printed for all of the world to see.
Well, I just want to make sure that you answer the question I asked, though. So my question was,
I'm gonna object. It's been asked and answered.
Overruled, Mr. Abadi.
I told you what happened. I read the motion. I am sure I told him what my opinion of it is.
okay,
And past that, we had no substantive conversation.
you did not. Okay.
Is there something you didn't understand?
No, I just wanted to make sure that
Okay.
you did not have a meeting with him in the conference room to discuss the motion.
Next question,
No.
Ms. Merchant.
So in the conference room of my office, within this week, you produced some financial document. That financial document was given to me, something, and I'm not even sure who was giving it to him by me or Mr. Abadi gave it to me. And I think he showed me a document in our conference room. But as far as a substantive conversation, I don't believe I've had any conversation with him that is substantive related to this.
Okay.
I have had conversations with him since you filed the motion, but they wouldn't be substantive to this. He sent me very nice sermons that have been done. And so we've had conversations about, did you listen to that sermon? You know, things of that nature. And I would say they were in relationship to this because I think he did it to be kind.
Okay. Let's start back in 2019.
Yeah.
So you and Mr. Wade met in October 2019 at a conference?
That is correct. And I think in one of your motions you tried to implicate I slept with him at that conference, which I find to be extremely offensive. I stayed at that conference. Mr. Wade was my teacher. I did not meet him when he taught the class. I was standing outside talking to Lisa Reeves, who is a judge. Me and her were just having a conversation. Mr. Wade walks up, and they hug each other. They have some brief conversation. She introduces us.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. We kind of thought that when you asked the question, you didn't answer the question, not a speech, so I object to the speech.
I
I
agree,
believe I'm
Judge.
able to explain my answers.
I believe she's able to explain her answer.
And that's,
Ms. Merchant, that's okay. I can handle it. Ms. Willis, I'll ask you to just listen to the answer, or excuse me, the question, and keep the answers confined to the question as best you can. I think you'll have more than enough ample opportunity on when the state is
Well,
able
it's
to ask
highly
follow-ups.
offensive when someone lies on you, and it's highly offensive when they try
Judge.
to implicate that you slept with somebody the first day you met with them, and I take exception to it.
All right. Well, Ms. Willis, she'll have the opportunity to explain all of that when it's the state's turn to ask more open-ended questions.
Yeah.
Ms. Merchant.
thank you, Judge. So again, my question was, you all met at that conference, though, right?
We did the
Okay.
meeting. As I stated, he taught the class. I did not actually meet him when he taught the class. I walked out of the class, and I'm not sure if it was that exact class or we had went to lunch, but we were standing in the vestibule, like outside of the class. Me and Judge Reeves were having a conversation. She had worked at a law firm I worked at back in 1996.
We're getting way afar. I mean, I don't mind her explaining her answers, but I literally just asked if they met at that
She's
conference.
explaining how she met Mr. Wade, which was exactly the question asked by Ms. Merchant.
It was-
These answers are more than appropriate.
Ms. Merchant, if you want more concise answers, perhaps you could lead the witness.
I will. Thank you, Judge. Isn't it true that you met Mr. Wade October 2019
I'm
at
gonna
the judges'
object. We
conference?
haven't gotten to the point where Ms. Willis should be treated hostile in this situation.
I think we
And
have.
I'm very
Mr.
much
Abadi.
want to be here, so I'm not a hostile witness. I very much want to be
Not
here.
so much that you're hostile, Ms. Willis, it'd be an adverse witness. Your interests are opposed to Ms. Merchant's.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Merchant's interests are contrary to democracy, Your Honor, not to mine.
All right, let's
Judge,
proceed.
I would just ask that
We
we...
can keep things moving. Ms.
Thank
Merchant,
you.
next question,
Thank you.
please.
Okay, so we've confirmed when you met. After that, isn't it true?
No, I need to explain this, and I think I get to explain my answers. When I met him, Judge Reeves introduced us. He handed me his business card. I'm unsure if I handed him my business card, but we exchanged information. He said, if you ever need any help, give me a call. And he walked to the parking lot.
So after that, you started dating shortly thereafter, correct?
That's a lie. That's one of your lies.
Okay. Do you know Robin Yurdy?
I know her as Robin Bryant. I knew her, so Robin did not go to my college. She went to the college of, I went to Howard University. She went to Morgan State. I met her through some people I knew. In college, we hung out a bit, not much because she was in Baltimore and I was in Washington, D.C., but we hung out a bit. After college, I lost contact with her. I probably didn't see Robin again until maybe 7 or 8 years ago, a chance meeting here in Atlanta, but we did not have a consistent relationship from when I left college and came to Emory Law School here in Atlanta. But 8 to 10 years ago, just by happenstance, I ran into her. So she was in Atlanta.
You have been friends with Robin for 30-something years.
Did you hear my answer, ma'am?
Yes, and I'm asking if you've been friends with her for 30-something years.
I've known her for 30-something years. We certainly hung out and partied together in college. She was from the D.C. area. She would come home, we'd party together. Wasn't close, but she was certainly in the girlfriends that partied together. And then, like I said, I ran into her about 10 years ago in Atlanta, Georgia. But we didn't talk throughout that time period. I didn't see her. I didn't even know where she was. When I ran into her, I was surprised she was in Atlanta. And so, yes, I have known her probably since 1990, 1991, but we have not maintained a consistent relationship that whole time.
For the last 10 years or 5, whatever you'd like to classify it as, have you been friends with her?
I have not spoken to Robin in over a year. I certainly do not consider her a friend now. I think that she, you know, there's a saying, no good deed goes unpunished, and I think that she betrayed our friendship.
So let's narrow it down, the timeline now. So my questions are going to be from the time period of 2019 until she no longer was employed for you, the last time you all talked. So all of my next questions are just focused on that time frame, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Up until she left your office.
Yes, ma'am.
During 2019, you all were friends, correct?
Yes, we knew each other in 2019.
During 2020, you all were friends, correct?
Yes, we were friends during that time period.
During 2021, you all were friends, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And such good friends that when you needed a place to stay, you asked her if you could take over her lease.
That's a lie.
You did not move into her apartment?
I
or her
did, but
condo?
that's not the way you characterize it is wrong.
I asked if you could take over her lease.
I did not ask if I could take over her lease.
Did you move into her apartment?
I moved into her condo in April of 21. The circumstances around that were that Robin met her husband. They wanted to move into another and separate place. She wanted to get rid of her condo. My father was living with me at the house. Because of this case and because of my stance on gangs, my life was being threatened regularly. My father urged me to leave our home. At the same time, as luck would have it, Robin wanted to give up her lease because she wanted to move in with this new man she met, who eventually became her husband. And so, as life circumstances worked, my dad was begging me to leave the house. He was afraid for me, afraid for his grandchildren. She wanted someone to take over her lease so that she didn't, have to pay a fee or get abandoned. And so, I don't remember when, but probably March or April of 21, I moved in and take over her lease.
And did you pay her or did you pay the leasing agent?
No, I don't even know who the leasing agent was. I paid her.
You paid her. Did you pay her cash or did you use the card?
There were some times that I would give her cash, but mostly I paid her via Cash App. That would be the most convenient thing. So I would not only give her rent, but then like when the utilities would come in, whatever the utility was, she might be like, I need $70, I need $100, whatever it was. And we never had a problem with money. Whatever she told me it was, I never asked to see a bill. I never questioned her. I just gave it to her.
What percentage would you say you paid cash versus Cash App?
Oh, the vast majority was Cash App. I don't know what percentage. I'm not going to guess that. But the vast majority was Cash App. But there would be times she would say, this bill came in at $70. Here goes $70.
Did you have a monthly rent amount that you paid her?
I can't remember. It was $1,400, $1,500. I can't remember what it was. And it would vary, which I don't understand to this day. But like I said, I never questioned her.
When did you move out?
Whatever she said it was, that's what I paid.
When did you
I
move
abruptly moved out in February, either late January or early February of 22.
Of 22.
Yes,
February
ma'am.
2022, is that what you said?
February of
Yeah.
22. I believe it is January, but I paid her half the rent of February of 22 is what I remember. And, cause I was offering to pay the whole rent, even though I didn't live there. I didn't think it was right. And I ended up just paying her half the rent.
So that's after you moved out. You said you paid her half of that. Okay. And the time that you said you had to move out of your house because you were scared, did your dad stay there at your house?
My father was concerned. Yes, we were both concerned.
Okay. But he remained there.
My father's 80 years old. He would have been 79. He was scared to death of COVID. You have to go back to when this was. My father's an older man. I wanted him to move out. We had some discussions about him moving out, and what he decided was the risk of COVID was more dangerous than the risk of the people that were threatening. Typical man, more worried about his daughter and his grandchildren than his own safety. You'll get to meet him, and you'll understand he doesn't scare too easily.
So his grandkids were living at the house as well at that time?
Well, I don't know how old your children are, but when you have adult children, they leave and they come back. They leave and they come back. So there have been periods of time that they're there, they come, they do whatever they want to do. Children do what children do. As long as their mother has a house, they'll come to it. Unfortunately, now the threats because of this case have gotten so extreme. I just pay a mortgage and no one lives there.
And that's what I was going to ask you. So when you moved out in, I think you said April 2021, you left your dad and your two kids at the house?
My dad and my two kids were not at the house. No.
They were not? Okay, so they didn't still live at your house?
My youngest daughter certainly did not live there.
Okay.
My oldest daughter would come back and forth. I can't say month for month when she was there or when she was not there. I know that she has been there post me moving out. At this time, no one is at my house.
So at some point after you moved out for the safety reasons, at least one of your children did come
Ms.
back.
Merchant, can we get to either the relationship or the
Sure.
financial benefit?
Yes. Let's see, we were back at 2021. So you were still friends with Miss Yeardy then. Were you also friends with Mr. Bradley?
I've never been friends with Mr. Bradley.
You've never been friends with Mr. Bradley?
No, I don't consider us to be friends. I don't dislike Mr. Bradley, but I don't consider us to be friends.
Is he someone that you would have in your phone and you would message with?
I might have text messaged him.
Okay. Would you text message him and Mr. Wade on the same conversations?
I don't recall doing that, but if it happened, it wouldn't surprise me.
Okay, so that wouldn't surprise you, the three of you. Okay. How frequently would you think that the three of you would have texted?
Not very. I wouldn't think very often, but you're asking me to recall. I don't even know what time period you're asking me to recall, but I'm not going to speak to that because I just really don't know the answer to that. And so I don't want to speculate as to how often that would happen. But it's not out of my practice to text two people on one text message. So if you told me that happened and showed it to me, it wouldn't surprise me, although I have no recollection of it.
But there would be some record of it in your phone, or the phone records would have some record of those texts.
Perhaps.
Talk about, you said that sometimes you paid Miss Yeardy cash.
I'm sorry.
When you went on vacation with Mr. Wade, let's just go one by one. Let's start with the first one. What's the first time you went on vacation with Mr. Wade?
I think the first time we went on vacation was around April of 22, and it's a vacation is a stretch, but I'm trying to be comprehensive. I recall April of 22. His birthday is March the 18th. So that would have been his 49th birthday. I took him to like Tennessee for the day. I think we went to a museum. I think we might have stayed the night. I'm not sure. But I mean, Tennessee's kind of hard to call a vacation, but I just am trying to be inclusive. And like I said, I know it wasn't more than a day.
So you didn't spend the night?
I think that we did. That's what I'm telling you. I think that there's a possibility that we stayed that night in April of 22.
Who paid for the hotel?
I think I did. It was his birthday.
And would you have used a credit card?
Probably maybe a debit.
And when did you start dating?
When I started dating Mr. Wade, it was right around then.
April 2020?
22, yes. It
2022.
was around there. I don't know, like, you know, it's not like when you're in grade school and you send a little letter and it says, will you be my girlfriend, and you check it. I don't know the day that we started seeing each other, but it was early 22 is my recollection.
Okay, early 22. And you all went to Florida on vacation as well?
I don't recall going to Florida on vacation with him.
You never went to Florida with Mr. Wade?
When we went to get on the cruise ship, we went to Miami.
Okay, that's the only time that you went to Florida with him?
I think we went to Miami and spent the night. That's my recollection.
Okay.
I think we spent one night so that we wouldn't miss the ship. That's my recollection of our
Who paid for that hotel?
in Miami. I don't remember that.
And how'd you get to Miami?
We would have flown. And we've done that, so that I'm clear, we've done that twice. I think one time we stayed, and I honestly can't tell you, did we stay when the ship left or did we stay when the ship came back? I also can't tell you, so there's 2 cruises out of Miami. There's one that's in that October time period that was with his mom. And then there was another that was a New Year's Eve trip. I know I paid for the New Year's Eve trip because the tickets were $697 each. And I thought, this is ridiculous that the tickets are $700 to go to Miami. But when you travel during New Year's Eve, you know, they get you.
So let's just back up and talk about the first time that you went to Florida with Mr. Wade. That was the time that you said you stayed in Miami at the hotel the first night?
That's the time I told you, I am not sure. So I'm not sure of 2 things. So I want to make sure that my testimony is clear. I'm not sure if we stayed in Miami on the October trip. I'm not sure if we stayed in Miami on the December trip. I just can't remember that. And I also don't remember, so that the record is clear, I don't remember if the necessity was as we got on the ship or we got off the ship. But I do remember there was a night spent in Miami because either whatever, I don't remember. But I think that there was a night spent in Miami.
That cruise is the one that you took in October, right?
Ma'am, if you have something to refresh my recollection, I'm intentionally trying to not be difficult with you, but I don't want to make up something.
Right.
I know that on one of those 2 trips, we stayed in Miami. I am not sure right now. You're asking me about.
Oh, I'm sorry, you misunderstood. I was not asking you which night you stayed in Miami. I'm asking if you took a cruise in October 2022 with Mr. Wade.
Yes, and his mom.
And his mother. That's what I was asking.
Yes.
Is that the first time you met his mother?
Yes.
It was on that cruise, and that was Royal Caribbean, I believe?
I honestly don't remember what ship. I know we're taking 2 cruises. I don't know what the ships were.
But he paid for the flight and the cruise on Royal Caribbean that time.
So yes, he paid. He is the original one that does it. He has something called, Mr. Wade is a world traveler. I'm not as versed as him. He's been to 6 of the 7 continents. And so he has both a personal travel agent and he also has a cruise travel agent. I don't know anything about either of those kind of travel agents. So he is the one that would book the travel. But we need to be clear when we're talking about just because he booked it doesn't mean, like, I don't consider him having taken me anyplace. Let me just be honest. The only point that's ever taken somebody someplace is for his 50th birthday. I consider that I took him to Belize. And I took him to Belize because, you know, I don't want to discuss his personal business, but I'm happy Mr. Wade is still here with us. And I did 50 big, very big.
So still on that October Royal Caribbean cruise, even though he had a travel agent. I'm sorry?
If you do me a favor, I don't know what cruise ship, what time. So if you'll help me and say October cruise with Mama or the New Year's Eve trip with his sisters, I'll be able to, we can communicate. I just don't know what ship.
October cruise with Mama. That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
He paid for the cruise and the flights for that trip.
So he called his cruise agent and he booked that through them because he has a cruise agent.
Right.
He also has a regular agent. I don't know the cruise agent's name.
So I wasn't asking about his travel agent. I was just asking if he paid for those.
He did not, though.
Okay.
Because the reason I consider that he did not is I gave him his money back.
And I was about to ask that. But initially, he paid for that.
Yeah, he called his cruise agent. Like, I think they have his card on record. They do whatever.
Okay. So initially, he paid for the cruise and the flight to Miami and the Royal Caribbean cruise.
And my understanding of that October cruise is like it was a package the lady did for him.
Okay. So, and I'll get to the reimbursements and all that. I'm just trying to confirm he paid for the flight and the cruise in October.
And I think that when you say things that way, I want this record to be
Initially.
abundantly clear that he calls his travel agent, he calls his cruise agent. They do whatever he tells them. He's like on a first name basis with these people. They do it, and then he tells me how much it is, and I give him the money back. I don't, just like you're asking me about the money with Robin, I don't do my friends like that. So if you tell me it's a G, then you're going to get $1,000. Whatever it is, I didn't ever make him produce receipts to me. Whatever he told me it was, I gave him his money back.
Isn't it true that he paid for the cruise and the flight on his credit card? I'm not asking about reimbursement or after. He used his credit card to buy the cruise and buy the flight, correct?
I have no idea how he paid for it, if it's a credit card, if it's a debit card, but certainly he called his cruise agent. You know, like how many people have a cruise agent? He calls his cruise agent, tells them where they want to go. They tell him what's booked. You have to remember, he paid for, that initial was me, him, and his mother.
And then after that cruise, you all flew to Aruba and spent a couple days in a hotel there, correct?
Right, and his mother was not happy
He
that we left her
initially
behind.
paid for that. He initially paid for that.
For Aruba, yes, ma'am.
So let's talk about both of those. I know he initially paid for it. Did you pay him back?
For the cruise and for Aruba, yeah, I gave him his money before we ever went on that trip.
You gave him cash before you ever went on the trip?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so when you got cash to pay him back on these trips, would you go to the ATM?
No, lady.
You would not go to the ATM?
No.
Okay. So Fulton County pays you direct deposit, I assume?
Yes, Fulton
Okay.
County and the state of Georgia both pay me direct deposits.
Okay. So the cash that you would pay him, you wouldn't get it out of the bank?
I have money in my house.
You have money in your house. So it was just money that was there.
When you meet my father, he's going to tell you as a woman, you should always have, which I don't have, so let's don't tell him that. You should have at least 6 months in cash at your house at all times. Now, I don't know why this old black man feels like that, but he does. When we were growing up, my daddy had 3 safes in the house. So my father's bought me a lockbox, and I always keep cash in the house. Now, I don't do it to the degree that my father would do it, so he would probably be ashamed with me, but I always have cash at the house. That has been, I don't know, all my life. If you're a woman and you go on a date with a man, you better have $200 in your pocket. So if that man acts up, you can go where you want to go. So I keep cash in my house, and I don't keep cash as good in my purse like I used to. I don't go on many dates, but when you go on a date, you should have cash in your pocket.
So my question was, where did that cash originally come from? If it
I had
didn't come out of the bank?
Cash is fungible. I've had cash for years in my house. So for me to tell you the source of when it comes from, when you go to Publix and you buy something, you get $50, you throw it in there. It's been my whole life. When I took out a large amount of money on my first campaign, I kept some of the cash of that. Like, to tell you I just have cash in my house, I don't have as much today as I would normally have, but I'm building back up now. So you just put money in. It's a very good practice. I would advise it to all women.
So you can't identify when you came into this cash or where the cash came from?
I didn't say I couldn't identify it. No, nobody gives me anything. I am sure that the source of the money is always the work, sweat, and tears of me. What you asked me for is, when did the money go in there? What I am trying to tell you is, so I got divorced in 2005 from my husband. No, it's important. You said, where did the money come from? And I need to tell you where the money came from. And so for many, many years, I have kept money in my house. That money in my worst days has probably only been $500 or $1,000. At my best days, I probably had $15,000 in my house at cash. At all times, there's going to be cash in my house or wherever I'm laying my head.
The money that you paid Mr. Wade, the cash, in October of 2022, you do not know where that money came from?
I do know where it came from. It came from my sweat and tears.
Do you know which job it came from? Did it come from Fulton County or did it come from a private job?
It came from, what are you talking about? So it could have come from a private job because before I was DA, I was in private practice. So I earned money during that time period. That's probably in there.
You don't
It
know
could
where-
have, what do you mean I don't know where it came from? I
I
absolutely
understand the situation. We can move on.
Okay, thanks. Same with Aruba. You don't know where that cash came from either, right?
Ma'am, you are mischaracterizing my testimony greatly. I'm not going to allow you to mischaracterize my testimony. I know that I keep money in my house. The amounts of money I gave Mr. Wade, it was never that serious. I don't think I've ever handed him more than $2,500 in a reimbursement. So we're not talking about $20,000 in cash. I don't have $20,000 in cash right now. The most I ever gave him, I know I gave him $2,500 when we went to Belize, because we went to one hotel and then we went to a second hotel. That $2,500 I actually gave him while we were still in Belize. I know that the Aruba trip, the one that you described with his mom, I think I gave him about $2,000 for that trip, for like total.
His mom went to Aruba with you?
The Aruba trip, so I consider that to be one trip. So we got off of a cruise ship and then we went to Aruba, which is why I cannot remember is that the time that we had to stay in Miami to wait for the flight for Aruba. So I consider that one trip, but we didn't like come back to Atlanta and leave. We flew down to Miami. We got on a cruise ship. We spent a couple of days with his mama. We came back to Miami. When we came back to Miami, either that day or the next day, we flew to Aruba. We spent a few days in Aruba and we came back. That was really one trip. Even though we went two places, it was one trip.
So let's talk about the California trip. Is that when you were moving your daughter out to California? When you all went, or did you have two trips to California?
My daughter doesn't live in California.
Did she ever live in California?
I'm not discussing to you the location of my child.
So how many times did you go with Mr. Wade to California?
Once.
And you all stayed in Napa Valley and he paid for the plane tickets and the hotel?
He paid for the plane tickets and the hotel.
And what did you pay for on that trip?
I gave him much less cash that time, probably $400 or $500, and then I paid for a bunch of stuff. I think we did 2 different wine tours that you do, which are pretty expensive. I think I bought him, he likes wine. I don't really like wine, to be honest with you. I like Grey Goose. I bought him a bottle of wine while we were there, and the sippings that you do. I can't remember how many, like 4 or 5 different places you go. I remember we went to this place that they do pairings. That was the most expensive thing that I think that we did while we were there. So they would pair, champagne, chocolate, and caviar. It was a 3, and it was like 3 different things: Sweden, Russia, someplace else. I'll make that up. But that was the most expensive thing we did that trip, and I paid for that.
You pay cash?
For us doing that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that trip did not cost me a lot of money. I might have took like $750 in cash on me because we weren't gone very long.
I'd only asked if you paid in cash. I don't need to know the amounts.
When I travel, I always take cash.
And is the cash that you keep in your house, or do you keep it at the condo that you were living in?
So at that point, it wouldn't be at my house, and I'm sorry if I was not clear. The money would be wherever I laid my head. So I wouldn't leave the money at the house. So if I was unclear, no. Money's going to be where I stay.
How much did you pay for your trip to Panama?
To where?
Panama, I believe.
I didn't go to Panama.
I may have the location wrong.
I never went to Panama.
So
Mr. Wade went to Panama with his frat brother.
Oh, he went to Panama with his frat brothers. So tell me about, let's see. So I want to make sure I've got them. I've got Belize. You already covered Belize. You covered the...
So let me tell you our real trips. In October, we went on the cruise with his mom. We got back from the cruise with his mom and we went to Aruba. I consider that one trip. Second trip, New Year's Eve, we went on a cruise to the Bahamas. That's the second trip. I'll make sure I get this right. Third trip, 100% on me. I think he might have spent $200 on that entire trip. We went to Belize. That was my trip. That was, his 50th. And then Napa Valley, we went around May. I don't know the dates, but it seems to me like it was close to Mother's Day.
And those are the only trips?
So that the record is complete, I can remember one time driving to, where were we? South Carolina, and we met my sister for lunch with her man.
When was that?
I don't know, but we didn't stay the night there. But I guess people would consider that a trip if you drive somewhere and you come back. That was insane because it was like 5 hours to drive. We ate lunch and we drove right back. I can remember driving to some little town in Georgia. I don't even know where I was. I had never been there before or after. There's some boat you can get on over to, and there's like a slave thing, if that gives anyone any reference. We didn't do that. I remember doing that. I remember driving one time to Charlotte. We had lunch with one of my very close girlfriends. And again, we drove to Charlotte, met my girlfriend for lunch, and drove right back. So that's a trip. We didn't stay the night there, but I just want to be complete in my testimony. We drove someplace, had lunch, drove back. I don't remember another driving someplace distant for lunch and coming back to Charlotte to see a girlfriend, to meet my sister in South Carolina. We went by ourselves when I told you about that remote place in Georgia. We could have driven someplace else and had lunch and came back, but that's all that comes to my recollection right now. There could have been another place we drove and had lunch. My security team was very clear to me. I'm not to be out and about in Atlanta without them. And so for me to do something just very normal that a normal person would get to do, if they weren't prosecuting this case, I got to drive 4 hours to do it.
And that's what I was going to ask you. Your security detail, did they take you to and from your house?
They take, well, so I haven't been able to enjoy my home.
Condo, I'm sorry.
Since March of
where you lay your head. Did they take you to and from where you lay your head?
99% of the time.
Would they take Mr. Wade to and from wherever you laid your head?
That has never in the history of ever happened, ever, okay?
Your security team has never taken him?
From my house? That's a lie.
That's another. If they've ever taken him anywhere.
And I'm telling you that that's never happened.
So your security team has never taken
My
Mr. Wade
security team has never taken Mr. Wade from any place where I have lived and brought him here. Never. Not once. Not ever.
Have they ever taken the two of you together?
To where?
Anywhere.
We've left this building and gone to lunch, but I go to lunch so rarely that is a very rare occasion. I am sure, and let me be clear, it wouldn't just be Mr. Wade. So I'm sure my security team has taken me to lunch. Probably been a time I've left here 7 o'clock, gone to get something to eat, and I don't even know that they would have taken him or if he would have driven himself, but they've taken me to do that. But we're talking very few, very far in between. Most days I don't even eat lunch, and when I do, it's because my assistant has heated up some bag, something, and I eat through meetings and eat in my office. It's not a practice of mine to go to lunch.
During the time period that you were dating, would your security team ever take you two together anywhere?
No.
Never.
If there was a lunch that occurred that I just described, if there was a meal that occurred that I just described, anything outside of that, and it needs to be very clear. Not often. Once, twice. Because I want to be over-inclusive, I'm saying once or twice. I'm not certain that it happened, but I'd rather be over-inclusive with you.
So your office objected to us getting Delta records for flights that you may have taken with Mr. Wade.
And, well, no, look. I object to you getting records. You've been intrusive into people's personal lives. You're confused. You think I'm on trial. These people are on trial for trying to steal an election in 2020. I'm not on trial, no matter how hard you try to put me on trial.
So my question was, do you have any problem?
I object to getting any personal records of mine.
We're not dealing with privilege through a witness.
And I'm not, no, I'm not dealing with privilege. What we had offered to put them in camera for the court to review, and I just want to know if she has any
That's
problem.
not something you deal with a witness.
Okay, you have to file as part of your job something called an income and financial disclosure report, correct?
That's correct.
And you filed your first one, so you filed 2 to date, is that right?
Is it 2 or 3? I probably would have filed 21, 22, and maybe I haven't filed 23 yet, because isn't it due like June of the next year?
April, I believe. So you filed, let's see, you filed your first one, it looks like April 15th, 2022, and your second one, April 17th, 2023. Does that sound familiar?
That I don't remember the dates, but you're an officer of the court. I'm gonna hope you're telling the truth now.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you. I already gave the state a copy. Exhibits 20 and 21, if you take a look at those. They're part of the certified records.
Can somebody bring me some? Yeah. The eyes are getting a little old. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
those are the ones that you filed.
This looks like me for sure. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Judge, we'd move to admit 20 and 21.
I think you need to delineate which one's which
20
one's which.
is 2021, so it accounts for the time period, Your Honor, January the 1st, 21 through December the 31st, 2021. That is Defendant's Exhibit 20. Defendant's Exhibit 2021, it accounts for the time period, January the 1st, 2022 through December the 1st of 2022.
All right. Any objection to exhibits 20 and 21
Nope. Sorry.
from other counsel? Admitted without objection.
Yeah. When did your personal relationship with Mr. Wade end?
Our personal relationship ended in this year. So let's be very clear so that we don't mix words. I don't want to mix words in here. Mr. Wade is my friend right now. Mr. Wade, I would say, has been my friend since 2020. I think he started out as like a mentor and a professional colleague. He became my friend and somebody that I really respected. I feel very indebted to Mr. Wade for taking on the task of this job. And he is certainly my friend and one of the people that I respect the most. So if you ask about a personal relationship, I consider myself to have a personal relationship right now, Mr. Wade. I consider myself to have a personal relationship with Anna Cross. I consider myself to have a personal relationship with Mr. Abadi. I consider myself to have a personal relationship with Andrew Evans.
Okay, let me just clarify that
I
before we
have
go.
a personal relationship with him as we speak right now.
A romantic
I don't think
relationship.
that's what you're asking. I think that's what
Romantic
you're asking.
relationship. When did your romantic relationship with Mr. Wade end? Did it end?
Me and Mr. Wade, we are good friends. My respect for him has grown over these 7 weeks of attacks. We are very good friends. I think, but for these attacks, it would have been a friendship that, as life goes, you would have stopped having. I think that you have cemented that we'll be friends to the day we die.
Let's.
Could we just have an answer to the question?
I can handle Mr. Seda. Let's have
She
it.
asked about a personal relationship.
She asked when the romantic relationship ended. That's the question.
It's sometime in, I'd say late summer of 2023. So I don't believe me in, this is what you're really asking about. This is the salaciousness of all of this, right?
No, I'm just
When
asking
you're
about your
re-
romantic relationship, when you stopped dating. Asking.
I think that me and Mr. Wade, so he's a man, he probably would say June or July. I would say we had a tough conversation in August. And so that men in relationships at the end of physical intimacy, women in relationships when that tough conversation takes place.
And where, when did he come to, I guess the condo, I'm not sure what you called it, condo apartment, would he come and stay at that condo or visit you there? I'm sorry, visit you there.
What condo, what apartment? I want to be clear.
So not your house. I know you classified one as house and one as condo, so I'm trying to use those terms.
So but there's been more see, what you don't understand is because of this case, I got to move. And so I
Ms.
need
Merchant, if you
to,
could ask a more precise
Yes.
question.
please give me the time period. that we're
Mr.
talking
Wade
about.
visits you at the place you laid your head.
When?
Has he ever visited you at the place you laid your head?
So let's be clear, because you lied in this, let me tell you which one you lied in, right here. I think you lied right here. No, this is the truth.
Judge,
And
this
it is a lie. It
We're
is
gonna-
a lie.
All right, Ms. Willis.
You see,
Mr. Seda, thank you. We're going to take 5 minutes. Be back in 5.
may I go to the bathroom?
Ready, Judge?
Yeah. Yeah, you go. All right,
Thank you.
We're back on the record. Before we proceed, though, I'll advise everyone here, this being a room mostly full of lawyers who have spent their lives in and out of a courtroom. We all know what professionalism looks like, what decorum looks like, and devoting ourselves to the rule of law and proper advocacy. I would urge everyone to keep those principles in mind, starting with the fact that we won't talk over each other. And from there, we'll get through this. Ms. Merchant.
Thank you, Judge. How often did Mr. Wade visit you at a place where you were living between 2019 and 2021?
So you want to start with the lie that he lived with me in South Fulton in 2019, a home he's never been to? That's one lie you told in your document. No.
Judge, I didn't ask her about that.
Ms. Merchant, I want you to ask a very precise question. I think she's saying and answering that he did not live with her. So why don't we break that up into smaller
Ever.
parts?
And I didn't ask about living.
But you put in your, while we're talking about professionalism, while we're talking about professionalism, she put in 3 different documents he
You'll
lived
have
with me.
full opportunity to respond.
In
And filed that with the court.
in
professionally.
2019,
He's never been to South Fulton. In 2019, I lived in South Fulton. He has never been to my residence in 2019, ever, not once.
in
2020?
2019, he's never been to your residence, any place.
I lived in my home in South Fulton before I started getting the threats that were here, a house I paid for with my own sweat and tears. I'm no longer able to live there. But in 2019, I did. And in the 2 months of 2019 that I knew Mr. Wade, 3 months, the beginning of October, all of November, and all of December, Mr. Wade never came to my house in South Fulton. Let me help you out. I lived there in 2020. He never came to my house in 2020, let alone live with me, as you put falsely in these documents. In the first 3 months of 2021, when I could still enjoy my home, Mr. Wade never came to South Fulton, and it is certainly a lie that he lived with me.
So in 2020, so you said 2019, 2020, did Mr. Wade ever visit you at a place that you
He
resided?
has never been to my home in South Fulton. 2020 was before I knew that a phone call was going to be made and I was going to have to abandon my home. As a result thereof, he never visited, lived at, came to, or has seen South Fulton.
You qualified that with your home in South Fulton.
That's where I lived in 2020.
2020, did he ever visit you at a place that you resided?
Okay. I don't understand. You must give me guys. In 2020, I
she's-
lived in South Fulton.
Okay.
That's the only place I lived in South Fulton. That's before I had to abandon my home, Judge.
All right.
And at my
Well,
home
I
in
think we're
South
gonna clarify
Fulton,
this. We'll break it
he never came there, okay? So if you don't come someplace, you can't live there.
Ms. Willis, I'm going to have to caution you. This is going to be my first time I have to caution you. We have to listen to the questions as asked. And if this happens again and again, I'm going to have no choice but to strike your testimony. So we need to break this down. Ms. Merchant's question, I believe, is asking whether you lived anywhere other than South Fulton.
I did not live anywhere but South Fulton, Georgia in 2020. That is before I began my prosecution of this case, and it was my plan to only live there.
Did Mr. Wade ever visit you at the condo that you leased from Miss Yurdy?
He visited that condo, yes.
He did.
Yes.
Did he ever spend the night at that condo?
No.
Just visited.
Yeah, but he did visit for sure.
Did you ever go out to eat together, other than the lunches you talked about,
In
during
2020?
2019 or 2020?
I would think that we probably went to lunch, but it wouldn't have been, let me think, 2019. I'm going to say, I don't know, I'm going to say we probably broke bread someplace in 2019. I don't remember it, but it seems like we would have broke bread sometime in 2019. So I'm going to say yes, although I have no recollection. But it seems to me like I go out to eat and drink with pretty much everyone, so I'm gonna say yes.
So outside of the vacations that we've already talked about, did you ever go out to dinner with Mr. Wade?
I mentioned to you that
I'm gonna object as to what time period. Like, we're asking very vague questions. I thought we were treating the witness as hostile under 611. We're no longer doing that. So we're gonna go back and forth. We need to be more specific with our questions if we're gonna treat her as hostile.
All right, Ms. Merchant, it's not so much, I think you can elect between leading and open-ended questions, but I think we are still wondering about, and I think we need to get back on track of focusing on the financial benefit or the relationship.
And my next question about if you did go out to dinner, who paid when you went out to dinner?
he paid, I paid.
You both paid.
Okay, so let me be real clear. We didn't say, oh, the bill is $102. You give $51, I'll give $51. I don't operate like that with my girlfriends. I don't operate like that with anyone. He caught the bill, I caught the bill. Whomever.
Did you ever pay him through Cash App?
No.
You only ever paid him through cash?
Yes. What we're talking about, I'm very confused
You've
now.
never
Like,
given Mr. Wade money through Cash App.
No.
The only money you've ever given him outside of a contract is cash.
I didn't give him money in a contract, so that was cute, but I didn't give him money outside in a contract. What happened? No, we're gonna answer it since you said it. He worked more hours than he was paid, and the county paid him for the work that he did. So don't be cute with me and then think that you're not gonna get an answer.
And I will ask you about the contract in a minute. I asked you about cash. Did you ever pay him anything? And I'm trying to qualify my questions. I'm not talking about the contract with Fulton County that was paid. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about outside of that. Did you ever pay him anything other than cash?
I've only given him cash a few times in the course of what we're talking about.
So you've
If
never
we
used
would go to dinner,
Let her finish her answers.
if we would go to dinner, I wouldn't give him cash because he paid for dinner or I paid for dinner. I've given him cash only a few times in life, probably 4.
Okay.
Probably the most money I've ever handed him is $2,500. The least amount of money I've handed him, probably between $500 and $1,000.
You never wrote him a check?
Ma'am, I don't have checks.
Okay. So you have no proof of any reimbursement for any of these things because it was all cash, right?
The testimony of one witness is enough to prove a fact.
So my
Are you
question was,
telling
do
me
you
that
have
I'm
any
lying to you? Is
proof?
that what you're intimating right here?
I'm asking if you have any proof that you paid him any of these
The
monies.
proof is what I just told you.
You have no written proof. Is that correct?
So I have some, probably some transactions like in Belize. I probably spent $500 on my card in Belize. I spent I can't remember, $900 on each of our tickets to go to Belize. I did the $700. I probably got some minor expenses in Aruba that would be on a card. But for the most part, for those trips, other than, so the 2 cruises, I gave him money for those before we ever left, because they were pre-booked. Let me answer.
Well, the question was if you had any written proof. And so
So I've answered you that I've had written
we
proof.
can move
for
to the next question. If you've answered if you had any written proof, and that was my question.
I want to make sure that we're clear that for the 2 cruises,
Judge,
and that's
I
the
asked if
cruise
she gave
plus
him written
Aruba.
proof.
We're not going to talk over each other. Ms. Merchant, she answered your question, so we can ask the next question. Ms. Willis and Ms. Cross will have plenty of opportunities to let you clarify your answers when it's her turn.
Thank you, Judge. Knowing your role as district attorney, you know that public funds are scrutinized and money is scrutinized and things like that. You
And
understand.
I've never, I'm sorry, go
You
ahead.
understand you're under a microscope. You have reporting requirements, all of those types of things. You have no record, other than your testimony, of the money that you've given Mr. Wade.
You've already asked that question. Let's keep going.
When you took office, you had a tax lien of $4,600. Did you pay that with cash when you made that tax lien whole?
I probably paid through, however you pay.
Okay. So, but you were saying that you had amounts of cash. You still had that lien in 2022 when you were dating Wade and going on these trips. So the cash that you gave him, that could have been used to pay this tax lien off?
You gonna tell me how to pay my
I'm gonna
bills?
object. This is not relevant as it relates to why we're here today.
Ms. Merchant, are you trying to establish that she was insolvent in some way?
I definitely was trying to establish that she did not have these mass amounts of cash that she's talking about, yes.
All right. Re-ask the question.
You had a tax lien in 2022, $4,600.
Did you say I did?
And you did not use this cash that you had to reimburse Mr. Wade to pay that off, correct?
No.
Okay.
I went shopping too and I didn't pay it off.
And you talked about, you gave a lot of interviews to some authors in the book called Fani Willis, right?
I would not characterize it as a lot. I probably have spoken to them
No,
2 or 3 times.
My question is relevant as to.
I think it's already come up. That finances are discussed in the book. I'll overrule that.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilson, you can continue your answer.
What came up with Mr. Wade as it relates to hearsay statements that he was asked about in relation to what Ms. Willis may or may not have said in relation to an author. So it's not relevant to the testimony that's occurring at this time.
I think Ms. Merchant has said that inside the book, she also makes a statement as to her own finances, and that's that issue.
So you gave interviews to the authors of this book, correct?
Once or twice.
Okay. And
3 times, just to be comprehensive. I don't know if it was 3 times, 2 or 3 times, I think.
you were quoted in the book, and I will give you a chance to say if this is a misquote. You were quoted, when they asked you about if you wanted to run for office for DA, you were quoted, "I really don't want to be financially effed up again." Do you remember saying that?
So what that refers to,
My question first is if you remember saying that.
I remember saying something similar to that, but I would like to be able to explain what that's in
fine.
reference to. That's not in reference to anything else. It was a huge sacrifice to be district attorney in Fulton County, huge. I was doing just fine. I had a municipal court judgeship that was paying me $100-something thousand a year, and like you got to show up twice a week. Easiest thing I've ever done in life. I also had private clients that were paying me to represent them. So I was able to have a law practice and that. Raising 2 daughters by myself, there were times in life where things were hard. And so I was telling people, I don't really run for DA. I don't want to run for DA. I'm in a good position right now. I got this easy job that I enjoy, being the chief judge of the city of South Fulton. I'm making money at the law firm, and I'm not sure that I want to make this sacrifice. And why does it always have to be me? Eventually, I prayed. I think that I was the appropriate person. I think that I did that. So when you're referring to that, what I'm saying is, why should I make a sacrifice again? And what I was not talking about is being district attorney. Once you get elected district attorney, you're in a fine financial position. I make over $200,000 a year. What I was talking about is I ran for judge. When I ran for judge, I took $50,000 of my personal money out of my retirement, and that money ended up being lost. And I know when you bet on yourself, you're going to have to bet money on yourself. And so what I was talking about was not wanting to go through the personal financial expense of running for office. By no means did I think that I was going to be financially in a bad position once I won. Let's talk about what I was up against, because it's important to understand that comment. I had a district attorney who had been here for 24 years. People, no, it's very relevant as to what my mindset was about this. So I'm trying to answer your question. So what I was saying is
Tailored solely to finance.
right, but it is about my finances. If I didn't, nobody put me in this seat. So I had already run for office once. I had spent $50,000 of my own money running, and it was vamoose, nothing. And so when I'm talking to those offers, I'm talking about the contemplation of the sacrifice of the run, not the sacrifice of once you become DA. The odds were against me. I was likely going to lose the election based on who I was running against. So that needs to be in the appropriate context.
Isn't it true that the authors also wrote, and you can dispute this if you'd like, that you were broke after that race?
The 2018 race.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a hard race. I wasn't broke like I didn't have any. So broke is relative to depending where you are, but that hurt to lose that $50,000. So I'm sure my mental mindset was like, I just gave $50,000 away.
Right. So they characterized it from their conversations with you that you were broke, you had poured your own money into the campaign, and you weren't able to pay your own bills because of your clients couldn't pay their bills to you, and you had a paltry array of family and asset forfeiture cases. It says you were trying to make it month to month. Is that an accurate depiction of your financial situation at that point?
I would want to read that, but I don't remember clients not being able to pay their bills. Or
May I approach, Judge?
you can.
You may.
Page 13.
I have not read this book. So like this fact here, her ex-husband Fred had run into a financial, I have no information
I
about
didn't
that.
ask you about that. I
Okay.
just asked about if what they represent from their interviews with you, that you were broke and that you had clients that weren't able to pay their bills.
Can you show me where that is? Because this is where you put the tab, so that's where I read.
Broke, couldn't pay their bills.
Yeah, I'm sure I characterized myself as broke as leaving that $50,000. I don't know that I had her nascent law practice at poultry rep.
Well, you just
I didn't have-
Ms. Merchant.
I thought I had a law practice. So this is not correct. I'm sure it's just, I didn't have any asset forfeiture cases. So I had one case where they had took one of my clients' money at the airport. I don't know if that's what I don't know. Poultry array, I did have family law cases. I guess that's what they're talking about. And clients who couldn't pay their bills ain't clients, so no.
So my question was just if this was a fair and accurate representation where it says you were trying to make it month to month at that point.
No, I don't think that is actually a fair and accurate representation, but I am certain that after the 2018 election, I'm still not really happy about having given up that $50,000.
You know when you paid your tax lien?
I don't.
You don't? Do you know if you paid it?
I know I've paid some taxes. I don't know. I don't want to speculate.
Did you tell anyone at Fulton County Board of County Commissioners about your relationship with Mr. Wade?
No.
Did you disclose your relationship to anybody at Fulton County?
No, I don't think so.
And as the chief law enforcement officer of Fulton County, I assume that you're familiar with the county code and ordinances?
I've said we're not going to cover that in this hearing, Ms. Merchant.
I'm sorry, Judge?
We said we weren't going to cover the county regulations.
Okay, and I won't. Let me ask you this then. So are you aware that you're required to disclose any relationship with someone that you contract with in Fulton County?
I'm going to object to the court prior ruling that you made this morning.
Would this be different because it's a potential for impeachment?
Yes.
What did you ask me?
Ms. Merchant, if you could re-ask the question.
Okay. Are you aware that Fulton County requires you to disclose any relationship with someone that you're doing business with?
I'm not aware, and I know often that things are confused with state constitutional officers in county, but I'm not aware.
Okay. So it's not so it's your understanding that you don't have a duty to disclose the
She's
relationship?
answered that question. Let's keep going.
Did you keep track of this cash that you paid him at all?
What are you talking? I don't understand.
Did you keep track? Did you keep a ledger? Did you keep track of it?
So I've only given him cash, as I mentioned, 3 or 4 times. There's no ledger. This is friends handing money off to each other.
So the answer is no, you didn't keep
And I
track.
think you've already asked whether there was any written proof whatsoever, and she's
Yes.
answered that.
Okay.
So we've covered this. Let's move on.
Who were you referring to when you suggested that Mr. Roman's motion to disqualify was racially motivated?
We already said we're not talking about the forensic misconduct that's been alleged.
And, okay.
And just so the record is clear, I don't believe I said that his motion was racially motivated, so I don't want that to stay there. I've never said his motion was racially motivated, so that should not be
Ms. Lewis,
true.
I think
She
it would
wrote
be
that.
best if we don't need to go down that road. We're going to save that for argument.
You once said that you would not engage with a personal relationship with anyone that worked for Fulton County. Is that correct?
An employee?
Anyone that worked for Fulton County?
I think I said an employee.
Okay. So that's the qualification you give an employee? You wouldn't.
I think that's the statement that I made, so if you want to quote me accurately.
So it's your position because Mr. Wade was not an employee? Or it's your position he wasn't an employee, correct?
Mr. Wade is not an employee, and he will tell you that over and over again.
Just 1 moment, Judge. I'm sorry, the statement, just so I make sure I accurately quote you. What you said was you won't sleep with people who work under you. Do you not consider Mr. Wade working under you?
I consider Mr. Wade to be an agent.
Agent?
Yeah,
All right.
an appointee is what I really think of him as.
Your point, whatever merit it has, Ms. Merchant, is on the record. Next question. All right. Do we need any moments in a minute? Mr. Sadow.
Yeah, I'm ready to go, Your Honor.
All right.
I'm going to try to ask you questions that you can actually answer without having to explain, okay?
Yes, sir. My comprehension skills are pretty good, so we should do all right.
We shall soon see. If I heard you correctly, you moved into what I will refer to as the Yurti condo in either March or April of 2021. Is that correct?
Sometime between late February and April, yes, I don't, just so we're clear, yes. But in that time period, you're in the ballpark. We're in the ballpark.
And is that Yurti condo, would you say that it is in Hapeville?
It is in Hapeville, yes, sir.
And you moved in there for safety reasons?
My father, yes, I moved in there. We were concerned. My father was terribly concerned about me continuing to live at the house. And so that we're clear, people came to my house at 5 o'clock in the morning about the police brutality cases, saying I was going to have a wake-up call. There were security threats due to gang cases, and there were concerns due to the, that was at the very beginning of this, looking into that. And so for all of those reasons and what was happening, my father wanted me out the house, and begrudgingly I left.
Okay, so the answer to the question was yes for safety reasons, correct?
Those were all of the things that caused the safety concerns. I'm sorry.
I'm not questioning whether they are or are not safety concerns. I just asked that you moved into this condo, the RT condo,
Right.
for safety reasons, right?
Yes.
Okay. At the time that you moved into the condo, be it from February to April of 2021,
Yes.
was your father still living in your house?
Right, because my father.
That's
yeah.
all I asked you.
But I get to explain the answer, sir.
I don't know if there's an explanation. If I ask you, was your father still living at your house, the answer is either he was or he wasn't.
Yes, but you are going to get to argue at the end of this, as we both know.
I'm not gonna argue
And so
anything.
I
I'm
would
gonna
like
ask-
to be able
all
to
right.
explain why.
I'm gonna-
And so,
okay.
yes,
Willis?
because my father is an older gentleman, he was worried about COVID, and he stayed.
Ms. Willis, I'm going to have to say that's second time. Whenever we have to put a pause, we stop testifying, okay? You'll have a chance to explain yourself. The question was whether your father was not staying there at the time, and you're clarifying that in your answer as well. You can have a brief clarification, but it shouldn't be something that reaches well beyond the question. All right, Mr. Sadal, you can re-ask the question. We'll see where it takes us.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Was your father still living in your house at the time you moved to what I would refer to as the Yurti condo?
Yes, sir, he was, due to his concerns related to COVID.
Okay. The safety concern was that there was potential danger at your house. Is that correct?
Yes, my address had been exposed, so yes, there was concerns about potential danger at my house.
Okay, so anyone staying at your house in the time period after you went to the Yurti condo was still in danger, correct?
Yeah, what, no, he did.
I think you have to, it's your attorney, Ms. Willis. Sorry, Mr. Potter, your objection is speculation
Yes.
to the question of
Speculation.
whether someone was still in danger at her condo.
I can,
Just let her answer the question.
But,
Or Mr. Sadal wants to rephrase.
No,
I'm not sure.
I was able to
I've got
understand it.
I've got the objection, and then I have,
I'll withdraw the objection. We can move forward.
So,
Okay.
and I don't remember the question, so I can answer it.
well, you can now that the objection's been withdrawn. Can you try to answer that question?
Yes,
There's still a safety concern
I was-
for people staying at the house.
yes, I was very concerned about my father still living at the house. However, if you have dealt with an older gentleman, he was not, despite my urging him that I thought he should leave as well, he did not want to leave the house because he was particularly worried at his age about COVID. But that became I don't want to say I was not happy with that decision of my father's, but I can't ultimately make him leave, and he stayed there too long, in my opinion.
Okay, thank you. During that period that you left to go to the Yurti condo, did any of your children stay at your house?
So I don't, I don't think that they were there at that point. Certainly my baby wasn't there.
I'm talking about this entire period. We're talking about, if I remember correctly, and you'll correct me, I'm sure, you said that you stayed there at what I would call the Yerti condo until January of 2022, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm asking you in that period, which would be February to April of 2021 until January of 22, did any of your children stay at your house?
And you don't have to yell at me. I'm able to understand. So I would ask you to not yell at me. That being said, I don't actually expressly remember, but I can tell you, since I have left my home, there have been times my oldest daughter came in. But I can't tell you with certainty the time window that you've said, if they did or not. And so I don't want to speculate to that, but there was some time that my oldest daughter came back. Whether it was that period or after I left the Yurdi residence, I'm not sure, okay?
Okay, so if I continue to go into more detail on this, you're not going to be able to give me an